Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My wife cheated and lost everything. Gonna preface this by stating that this happened 3 years ago. This isn't a throwaway account, but fake names will be used. Let's start with the frame of this story. I, 27 male, grew up like most guys under the assumption that the one is out there. That if you play your cards right, your soulmate will magically appear and you'll ride off into the sunset. When I was 19, I met a woman. Let's call her Bree. I met Bree through mutual friends while I was in the army. Bree was cute, quirky, seemed like a real overall good girl. Her friend, let's call her Sam, thought it would be a great idea to get us together as a couple. Not sure what her reasons were, but I was into her and she was into me. Bree was up for a few days visiting Sam, and I had just gotten back from leave in my home state, so the meetup was inevitable. We all had lunch. Myself, Bree, Sam, and Sam's husband, let's call him Jim. This meetup was nothing spectacular, but after Bree had flown home, she messaged me on Facebook and we hit it off. After roughly 3 weeks of talking to Bree, she hit me with a very strange question. If I was pregnant, what would you do? Now, before I get to my answer, let's do the math here. She was in her party years and got around frequently. I found that out way later in the relationship. She had a boyfriend a month before meeting me. I was adopted, so accepting a kid as my own seemed like a no-brainer. My answer was what seemed like the right thing. I will love that kid as if they were my own. Well, turns out she was showing a lot of signs of pregnancy. A week later, she took the test and was positive. I stood by my word. I'll take care of this kid. There was a 3-month gap between this revelation and when she decided to fly out to me. During this gap, she was very flaky, trying to see if she could get who she thought was the dad to commit and help her to take care of her kid. He never budged. She chose me instead. Yes, I understand now why staying with her was a bad idea. I was dumb, in love, and I believed she was the one and that she'd come around eventually. I married her so that the army would cover the birth and the rest should have been history. But we all know it wasn't. Year 2. 2 years in, I noticed something a bit strange. Some guy, we'll call him Ron, was liking every post she put out and commenting on every photo that had the daughter in it. This seems odd. At this point in our marriage, I had gotten out of the military and was working a job in security. One night, while working, my lizard brain connected the dots and the gut feeling followed. Now, I'm not one to act on just suspicion. I need proof. Given that I was working a nightclub that night, I would get off at 4 in the morning. She'll be asleep. She leaves her laptop on the living room couch downstairs every night before bed. The plan is coming together. I get home, head to the couch. The laptop is there. I open it and take 2 guesses at the password. It's the birth year of our daughter. I go to her Facebook. I look in messages. There it is. 6 months of conversation with a guy named Ron. Some of the conversation is flirty. Some is banter about how useless and less of a man I am. The worst part, though, was the revelation that this guy is who she feels is the biological father, and she's trying to get him involved. I scroll and scroll until I can't stomach it anymore. I grab the laptop, take it upstairs, and set it on her with the screen shining in her face. As she slowly wakes up, I say, "We're talking about this in the morning," and walked back downstairs. She normally wakes up at 7, but didn't come down until 9, probably hoping I would be asleep on the couch. She begins by saying it was only friendly talk and not technically cheating. I called BS and told her that if I see this again, I'm gone. Now, I said if, but I knew better. It would be when. This is when I set my plan in motion. I dropped out of college to get a job in my field and made sure anything that was opened up under credit was under her name. I began stating that back where I'm from has a better economy and that we'd be better off there. It took 2 years of convincing, but it worked. Nothing was under my name, and we were set to go to my hometown in 6 months. We got there in May, and I sent her home to visit the next month. I knew what she would do and who she would do it with. There was a guy we met through SAHM the day before we left, and I knew immediately that she was interested in him. 3 weeks after going to visit, she started acting strange again, prioritizing other things over me, putting things off, and becoming distant. Now, I spent 2 years setting the dominoes up. I just let her knock them over. I made sure I was jobless, had nothing to my name, and was home where I could fall back on family. I pressured her into admitting that she cheated, and the dominoes tumbled. I cut all funds that were being sent to the account, drained the account to file for divorce. I had nothing, so she couldn't take half. I had no job, so what lifestyle did we have that would require giving her alimony? Everything was in her name, so even though I had financial responsibility over some of those bills, the divorce lasted long enough to destroy her credit. I gave her everything and sacrificed much to raise her kid, but in the end, she lost the most. I'm now extremely successful and valued in my career. I'm not interested in marriage, but I have no shortage of women in my life. Life is good. I still have contact with the daughter, and Bree often flirts with me trying to get me back. I'm the only dad the kid has known, and I have no intentions of becoming an ex-dad. Even though getting back with her is emotionally tempting to be with the kid more, I know better and I have better options. Edit. My kid is supported above and beyond, despite no legal requirements to do more than just the minimum. Clothes, shoes, bed, games, toys, hobbies, I pay for it all. The kid is very much involved in my life, and she is provided for. I drop everything to talk to her, and I get involved in what she loves. I don't get to see her much, but there's very little that she longs for except living with me. The kid is mine, regardless of genetics. I made that investment in her life from the start, and I'm sticking to it. I worked very, very hard to keep her isolated from this revenge. She's happy and loves her daddy very much. I don't talk crap about her mom to her, and she has a healthy relationship with both of us. Even though she wishes mommy and daddy were together, she is understanding that it's not going to happen, and I'm working very hard to make sure that the impact of that is softened. Karen mother-in-law said my chili wasn't spicy enough, so I made it spicy for her. In my last relationship, I lived with my husband, Danny, in a duplex owned by his mother, Donna. We lived on one side, and his mother and brother lived on the other side. Donna was a very horrible person and took great joy in belittling me and tormenting me every chance she got. She took extra pride in herself if she succeeded in making me cry. My ex-husband is a professional cook and would often prepare enough food for his mother in addition to ourselves. On occasions, when I would do the cooking, she also expected to be served dinner. One thing I made often was chili. Both my ex and his mother loved my chili, but both liked their chili on the spicy side. I never made my chili spicy, as I have a sensitive stomach. My ex would just add hot sauce to his serving, and that was that. But Donna would complain endlessly about the chili not being spicy, even going so far as to demand I make the next batch of chili spicy for her. I told her I wasn't going to do that because I wouldn't be able to eat it. She essentially told me that what I wanted didn't matter, since she had been gracious enough to allow me to live in her home. I told her if she wanted it spicy, she could add hot sauce to it like my ex did, or she could just make her own darn chili. So next time my ex told her I was making chili, she came over while I was making it and watched me like a hawk, demanding I add this, that, and another thing. I told her I would be making my chili the way I wanted to, and she could go home and wait for it to be done, or find something else to eat. She left, and I continued tending to my chili. Now, my ex is somewhat of a hot sauce connoisseur, and he's never met a hot sauce that was too spicy for him. So the previous Christmas, I bought him a bottle of Carolina Reaper puree. When the chili was ready, he asked me to make a Tupperware container of chili for his mother while he used the bathroom, and he'd take it to her when he was done. So, like the good little wifey I was, I put the chili into the container with a heaping tablespoon of Carolina Reaper, mixed it up really well, added some shredded cheese on top, and closed it up, ready to be delivered next door. Ex finished in the bathroom, delivered the chili, and we sat down to our meal. We had just finished, approximately 30 minutes later, when his phone rang. My ex liked to have his conversations on speaker, and I was glad of it this time.
Danny, something is wrong.
What's wrong, Mom?
This chili. Oh, it's burning me up. What did your wife do to this chili?
Ex looks at me confused. I just shrug. She didn't do anything to it. It's just our normal chili. What did you add to it, Mom?
I added a little sriracha, but that shouldn't be hot like this.
Well, maybe you added too much.
That hateful jerk did something to my chili, Danny. I'm going to get her.
Calm down, Ma. You're overreacting.
I want her out of my house.
You can't kick her out over chili, Ma.
Watch me.
She hung up. My ex looked at me and asked, "Did you really do something to her chili?" I smiled sweetly and said, "She wanted it spicy. It's spicy." There were no real repercussions from this other than her losing it on me. Also, she was perfectly fine and never asked for my chili again. So, bonus. Entitled vegan roommate steals food and acts like she is the victim. So I, 21 male, am in my second year of uni, and I currently am rooming with 3 other people: Dan, 20 male, Max, 19 male, and Olivia, 20 female, all fake names. We all share a living area, kitchen, and of course a fridge. We all have a shelf space for our stuff and kind of share the rest of the fridge. Now in our group, I'm the only one that doesn't have any dietary requirements. Dan is gluten intolerant, Olivia is vegan by choice, and Max is mostly vegetarian because of a mixture of allergies and medical conditions. Me and Max are also in the same major and are close. When we all first moved in, Max noticed that some of his food kept getting moved to a different shelf, Olivia's shelf. Max has really bad social anxiety and doesn't do well with conflict, so he asked me to ask Olivia about it. When I did, she said she thought we had gotten the food for her because she's vegan. I explained that Max is vegetarian. I just said he's vegetarian because I didn't think it was my place to tell people about his medical conditions. She apologized and moved his food back and seemed happy to have someone else that understood. For the next few weeks, everything was fine. She did get a bit pushy every now and then with Max, saying that meat is the hard part and how easy it would be to stop eating milk and eggs, etc. Yesterday, we all decided to order takeout. We ordered Chinese. There's a beef-based dish that not only can Max eat, but it's also his favorite. So we got a portion for the group as well as one just for Max. We sat down and started eating, and when Olivia saw Max eating the dish, she went to get some. Max quickly stopped her and told her that it had beef in it. She sat there and blinked a few times before asking why he was eating it then. Max sheepishly replied that he can eat this dish. She started yelling that he can't make exceptions to veganism and vegetarianism when he feels like it. Max explained that he's vegetarian because of medical reasons. Olivia told him that he shouldn't call himself a vegetarian then, quickly filled her plate and went to her room. Today, Olivia refused to talk to anyone and would leave the room if Max came in. Max was clearly upset. I asked Dan to take him out somewhere while I talked to Olivia because I couldn't promise she wouldn't yell again. They left and I knocked on Olivia's door and asked to talk. She let me in and I told her that the way she's been treating Max is not okay. She said she felt lied to. She thought she had someone who cared about the same things that she did. I told her that it's okay to feel that way, but that's not Max's fault and what she's doing is wrong. She yelled at me, saying it was in fact Max's fault for misappropriating the label vegetarian and started comparing it to crimes. I shut that down right away and left to join Dan and Max, who had gone to the arcade. When we, me, Max, and Dan, got back, the place was a mess. Max's stuff had been thrown into the living area. This also included some of his gaming equipment and medical stuff, which had been damaged. Any meat product had been opened and thrown in the trash. Empty milk cartons in the sink, which were full, so I think she tipped them. Her shelf in the fridge was empty and anything that was vegan friendly. So most of Max's food, but also some of Dan's food, was also gone. There were 2 rooms on one side and 2 rooms on the other, and she and Max's rooms were next to each other. We called our RA, and she was really nice and calm, probably because Max was crying at this point. She said she would talk to Olivia and would probably have her moved because this wasn't appropriate. We're hoping she gets moved. She hasn't been back yet today. We just finished moving Max's stuff into Dan's room and setting up a fusion just in case. We literally did our food shop a few days ago, so we don't really have enough money to replace anything. Anyway, sorry, this was a bit of a rant.
Maybe you guys should call the police and tell them there's a wild vegan on the loose.
You're really just going to stand there? I'm from South Louisiana, and we have a different way of interacting with people that differs even from other southern states. I'm sure people know about the Southern hospitality, but South Louisiana cranks this up to 11. Ask anyone who has ever been there. We don't care about race, religion, social, or economic status. If you're human, you are owed to be treated with kindness and empathy until you prove otherwise. I left Baton Rouge and moved to Katy, Texas for a teaching gig. It was a Sunday, and I had to run to the Texas-only big grocery chain to get a few things. Sunday was a big shopping day, and the place was packed with long lines waiting to check out. I walked to the closest line with my few groceries in my arms. This was before the prominence of self-checkout, so no matter how much or how little you bought, there was going to be a wait. It's just how things were. No biggie. The lady in front of me had to be in her 80s and not more than 95 pounds. Her buggy was absolutely filled to the top. The people in front of her were almost done checking out when I saw her struggling to pick up a bag of frozen chicken to place on the conveyor. She struggled again with another item, and another, and another. The cashier started ringing her up and simply stared at her with impatience while this poor old woman struggled with removing items from her buggy. I was like, what the heck? I looked around and everyone was sighing with annoyance and impatience. The bagger, the cashier, the people behind me. Seriously? I placed my items down on a nearby drink refrigerator and asked the lady if she needed any help. With a brightness and joy in her eyes, she answered, "Please." I unloaded her buggy onto the conveyor and placed the bagged groceries back in as the bagger handed them to me. I was finished in no time, smiled at the lady, picked my items back up, and got back in line behind her. She paused for a moment. Evidently, she had been so flustered with trying to place her groceries on the conveyor, she had never noticed me behind her. "Wait, you don't work here?" "No, ma'am. Just thought you might appreciate a little help." She then gave me the biggest hug, and with tears in her eyes, she said, "Thank you. Thank you so much." I smiled again and told her, "You're welcome." I followed her out to her vehicle and helped her load everything. She thanked me again and told me she dreaded going to the grocery store because it was so difficult for her, and people were always getting frustrated with her when it came to checking out. I shook my head. That is sad. I'm sorry about that. Back home, stuff like that doesn't happen. If someone needs help, we help them. She started to tear up again, hugged me, and thanked me. I told her to have a nice day and headed back to my truck.
My heart feels so warm right now.
It won't after we read this next one. Entitled relatives think they deserve more than my adopted son. To give some context here, I must say that I'm an IT engineer with toxic family relationships. I did cut off my father and my uncles and aunts, yet I keep in contact with my cousins and their kids, which somehow I treat as mine, as I had none and I'm an only child. Therefore, it's the closest I got. I always prioritize success over relationships, so I'm single, and through the years I felt that my cousins' kids weren't mine, therefore I wanted to raise one of my own. It took me some time, but finally I adopted an 8-year-old, as those usually age out of foster care. I love the experience of raising a kid, yet I have had to deal with some entitledness from my cousins. It turns out that every now and then, I usually spend some money traveling with my cousins and their kids. Yet this year, for obvious reasons, I need to save money in order to get all of the stuff my son would need, and I'm planning on going big, the best of the best I can afford. I just explained this to my cousins and told them this year our trip together will be canceled. They said nothing, so I thought they understood the whole situation. Anyway, I wanted my kid to socialize with my cousins' kids, so I invite them all to a get-together party. After about 2 months, when my son felt comfortable enough, and somehow all of the kids were so mad and refused to play with my kid. He just sat in a corner and tried to not cry, but he did. I just talked with the kids, and they said he was not part of the family and they deserve more, as he's adopted, and they, as my family, were entitled to the trip to the parks in Florida. I was in shock and asked them where they got that from, and they told me how their parents have told them the reason why I took their trip was my son, who comes from the streets and isn't even family. I was fuming, so I told them all to leave. I had a Zoom meeting with just my cousins, who told me that their kids must come first, and I told them they made me realize my son comes first, so I canceled their college funds, their private school tuitions, and just told them that if my kid is not part of their family, neither am I, and they were cut off. I've been called unreasonable, but I think my son comes first, and I made the right decision. You want things done by the book? Alright, let's do that. I work as a freelance artist doing advertisement, ticket, and program booklet designs for various police and firefighter events that give to children's charities. It's not consistent work, but it pays pretty well for what it is. The people I work with directly are a promotions company that was created to sell the advertisement space and tickets. I've been working for them for a long time. Throughout lockdown, these people were essentially my only source of income, so I had to put up with their BS. Mostly having to put up with having to hear the check is in the mail for 2 or 3 months before it actually arrives. I convinced the owner of the company to download PayPal so I could be paid in a reasonable time. He was confused on how to use it, so I told him about Cash App. I was paid through Cash App only once before he said, "I just want to keep doing this by the book. These websites you're sending me look scammy." And because I don't work for him, I work for the unions and they're the ones cutting the checks. I asked him if he really wants to do that, and of course he said yes. Cue malicious compliance. He's becoming quite upset with me since he realized doing it by the book actually gives me all of the leverage. From that point forward, I had begun putting my logo watermark on every single thing I sent him. The first time he experienced this was with show tickets. He asked me to remove the watermark and send it to the printers. He was satisfied with the work. I told him the watermark will come off when there is money in my account. He told me that he can't start making sales until he has the tickets to sell. Thus, he doesn't have the money to pay me. Oh man, that sucks. Better figure out how to pay me electronically then. Here's my wallets, PayPal, and Cash App info, as well as info for direct deposit. He insisted he couldn't pay me before he has the tickets, so he agreed to a 50% price increase for me to release the files to him without pay, and with the company's logo on them. I actually got paid for that today. The second time was with a show poster. The same instance occurred, only this time I was told I'd have to talk to the Fraternal Order of Police about being paid since I work for them. They were very confused when I called them. An hour later, I got an angry phone call and was paid via direct deposit from the promoter's business account, not the FOP's account. This morning was pretty interesting. He called me up while meeting with the police association to talk about cutting me a check for the last show that happened yesterday. On this call, I was asked about bank transfers, asked how to make a wallet, all that good stuff. But the promoter asked why my invoice stated that I'm no longer accepting checks as a form of payment. "Are you sure you want me to answer that in this meeting?" I asked him. He said yes. So I told him while he was on speakerphone with his boss. "Because you don't pay me for months when we do checks. I only accept online or bank transfers." There was a little back and forth between him and the guy from the police association. It didn't sound like Mr. Promoter was having a good time. I was told I would get a call back about payment. Well, I received that call from the police association, not the promotion agency. I've been paid via PayPal and apologized to profusely. When I got the call from the promoter afterward, he had a very upset tone. He asked why I'm doing all this. "Well, sir, you told me you wanted it done by the book, right? This is by the book. We didn't do it by the book before because I've worked with you for years and your son is my best friend, so this is how it will be from now on. We'll see how it turns out. I'm confident I won't be losing any work since the police associations, firefighters, and other organizations have repeatedly told me how great my work looks and how I often work at half the price of other freelancers." How I got my boss fired when he tried to fire me. Starting out, let me explain why there wasn't a mass walkout and why I am the only one that quit despite us basically being terrorized at work. The job market was in shambles in my city at that time, with something like a 40% unemployment rate. I knew someone with a doctorate degree in theoretical physics working at a local fast food joint, as it was literally the only place hiring. The city had quick access to 4 research universities, but he got downsized due to lower admission rates. He is now the dean of the physics department at his former school. To quit any job, no matter how bad, was not smart, and a guarantee that you would not find a new one. I always worked customer service, food service, and hospitality since I was 14. At 24, I decided it was time to find a job with benefits and potential for career advancement, so I took a job stocking shelves overnight with a global monstrosity that started out as a mom-and-pop store. I felt right at home. I worked hard and constantly took the worst jobs and the worst days off to make sure I would be there on the weakest staffing days to rub elbows with management. If there was anything that occasionally came up that no one on the shift was trained to do, I would come in on my day off, without pay, to get trained how to do the task, like keys, paint, accounting issues, etc., to become less disposable and more versatile. It worked! And 10 months in, I found myself with an offer to promote to low-level management starting January 1st. Starting the weekend before Thanksgiving, the overnight manager started to understaff shifts to preserve his end-of-year bonus and acted surprised when people called out. He would then bully us into staying over with threats of write-ups for not finishing our assigned stocking tasks. Upper management was notorious for just signing off on write-ups without looking into their validity, so each staff being assigned 13 plus hours of labor to complete alone in 6 hours, while typically it was approximately 4.5 hours to account for tending to customers as well, was no defense. Since an employee could only get 2 of those write-ups in a rolling 13-month period before termination, we all would stay over as well as skip our breaks and lunches to finish. Those write-ups were also less job-threatening as he would simply turn a blind eye to us clocking out for break/lunch and returning to work. But there was a catch. Since any approved overtime would count against his $73,000 bonus, approximately 11 cents per approved hour, he would never file the approval forms for the overtime. This meant that it was considered unapproved, meaning that we were required to get approval to cut hours off our regular shifts to equal out what we stayed for. He, of course, never approved us to cut these hours. This was resulting in weekly write-ups from the same manager for unapproved overtime on those of us that made it to work every day despite the weather and missed holiday get-togethers with our families. Every week we would get our write-up and he would get praise for getting everything done with less approved staffing hours than typically allocated. Thankfully, write-ups for unapproved overtime didn't carry a lot of weight, but for 3 months they counted against your points for promotion opportunities. This went on until a week before Christmas. When I got my weekly write-up, I was told by the store manager, who offered me my position, I would be suspended for overtime abuse the next time my manager submitted a write-up for unapproved overtime hours. Determined to not lose my promotion, I started telling the manager no. The second time I refused to stay over without him signing an overtime approval form and giving me a physical signed copy before I hit overtime, he wrote me up for abusive actions towards a member of management and actions with intent to undermine the integrity of management and store policies. This instantly cost me my promotion, which greatly upset me. And then, like the idiot he is, he left me alone in his office to sign the write-ups and the acknowledgement that I was no longer promoting. Initially, I was going to just accept it and resolve myself to spending the next 13 months working my tail off for minimum wage and go up for promotion as soon as they fell off. When I started reading the acknowledgement form, I found I was not eligible to promote to management until I was write-up free for 5 years. This meant 6 years and 1 month before I could even try to get promoted again, all because I followed policy. So rather than sign it, I wrote "Buzz Off" in Sharpie across his brand new desk, which he got for being such a great manager, walked out of his office, handed him my vest and name tag, shredded the write-ups, and tossed them into the air like confetti, and told his no longer smug face that it was now my personal mission to get him fired. He lost his attitude when it sunk in I just quit. I could see little beads of panic sweat forming on his forehead as he realized that the only person capable of performing certain highly essential functions for his shift was walking out the door. He shouted after me, telling me that he could talk to the general manager and see if he could get the time frame cut down to 3 years. He offered to approve all of my overtime the rest of the season, offered me a cut of his bonus, and several other offers I can't remember. Honestly, if he had offered to withdraw the write-ups, which was still 100% an option, but he never offered, I would have accepted it, but I might not have followed through on my threat. I was too angry and too determined, and I didn't care if I became homeless, as long as I never had to work there again. Now, how did I get him fired? Well, due to certain ADA requirements, I was permitted to carry a voice recorder with me at work so I could record important meetings, announcements, and reminders. When I got written up the first time for unapproved overtime, I started recording his requests to both me and coworkers. I never used them to dispute the write-ups, but I never deleted them either. So I uploaded all the recordings to my computer, nearly 18 hours of audio, and sent it to the home office, CCing every store manager and compliance officer in the district. When I went in for my last paycheck, he was long gone. I was offered my promotion back, but I declined. The regional director then offered me my old manager's job with a $73,000 hiring bonus. Wonder where that came from. But I still refused and said I was never returning to retail. My former manager's boss laughed and told me that everyone returns eventually, and when I did come see her, she would find me a management spot somewhere. After 5 months of being unemployed, living with my mom, and barely surviving, I moved to another state and got a job working in a state prison as a guard, and am very fulfilled. Have you ever had a boss you couldn't stand? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I've never had a boss because I've never had a job.
Entitled aunt tries to force me to pay for her son's college, ends up regretting it. I, 25 female, and my sister, 24 female, lost our parents in an accident caused by a drunk driver 10 months ago. Our parents left everything to my sister, Taylor, and I with a 50-50 split, with the stipulation we would not have control over my parents' assets until we are 25. Until then, our Aunt Sue, 53 female, and Uncle Rob, 63 male, would have the controlling power of our parents' assets. Sorry, my mind went blank and I can't think of what that person is called. They're my mom's brother and sister. With me being 25, I have full control of my half of my parents' assets. However, my sister does not. If she wants to spend any money, she has to get approval from Sue and Rob. It took about 8 months for us to get our inheritance and finally have all of my parents' assets figured out. My Uncle Rob wanted all of us to go out as a family and celebrate my parents one last time now that their ashes are spread and all of the legal and paperwork stuff is finished with. We all go to dinner. My mom's whole side of the family, about 20 of us. All throughout dinner, Aunt Sue would make comments about how much money Taylor and I have at such a young age. I asked her multiple times to stop. She would apologize and change the topic. When dessert finally comes, Aunt Sue asks,
Well, your parents were paying for Alex,
20 male, her son,
college. How should we get that figured out for the fall semester?
Taylor and I knew my parents were paying for his school. We also knew Alex has almost failed out twice and has only completed 1 full year of classes despite him being in college for 3 years. Taylor and I both knew my parents were going to stop paying for Alex's college since he wasn't taking it seriously, and they gave him multiple warnings. Taylor looks at Sue and says, "Can we please talk about this later? This really isn't the time." Aunt Sue got mad and said,
You both graduated college, and you both have great jobs and make enough to support yourselves without the money your parents left for you.
She said some other stuff, but to summarize, she thinks we need to learn how to be less selfish and share our inheritance with the rest of the family, and that we have to pay for Alex's college, since that is what my parents said they would do. At this point, I blew up. I told my aunt that she needs to stop asking about the money. It isn't about money our parents gave us. It's the money we inherited because they're no longer here. I would trade all the money in the world to just have 1 more year with them, let alone the 20+ years they should have had. I told her that she was being a greedy jerk and that I would do everything in my power to make sure that she never gets a penny from the inheritance, and that neither Taylor nor I would be paying for Alex's college moving forward. I leave the table, pay for the whole dinner, and leave the restaurant. Taylor follows me out and we leave. Neither one of us has reached out to Sue or the rest of the family, and they have not reached out to us. Force the student to do your job for you? Enjoy losing your whole career. I work in a healthcare facility with different disciplines, and we have the main clinicians and assistants as well that do treatments. For the longest time before lockdown, clinicians would take students from schools because they need to have some hand-on experience before they graduate and get to take their state exams. The players of this are, we've got me, OP. We've got Dory, the clinician teacher. We've got Hannah, the student. We've got Casey, another clinician. And we've got Katie, my regional manager. So I'm the supervisor of the health clinic, and I'm in charge of all clinicians. Even though they're fairly independent, they have to report to me, and I in turn report for the whole clinic. This starts with Dory. She has a lot of friends in one of the prominent universities here. She's very well connected with them. She graduated from there, is involved with their activities, and just active in the school in general. I've known Dory for years and have worked with her before, but she was never directly under my management because her home clinic was another location she would just help out. I would hear things about her, the way she treated the assistants that worked under her, a rudeness towards other clinicians, and some sketchy stuff about basically fraud of billing for services not rendered. This is a big no in healthcare, but it happens more than you think. Anyway, I had no proof of this, and all the patients at my clinic had not voiced any complaints. Anyway, Dory had started taking students in, and she was moved at my clinic. When she came here, she was still helping at another clinic not too far away. Dory accepted a student from her university to follow her and learn from her and slowly integrate into clinical treatment. This is where Hannah enters into the picture. Very shy girl. Did everything you asked of her, but because she was shy and also being a new student, she's unsure if the treatment she is administering is the appropriate one. That's why you have people like Dory to be next to you and counsel and guide you. After the first few weeks, I started noticing Hannah would be in the clinic and would be doing treatments without Dory being around for a few hours. This isn't allowed because the instructor should always be around at all times to supervise their students. After a few times of noticing this, I brought Dory and Hannah into my office and said this cannot be happening and it's not allowed. If it happens again, I would have to report it, and this was not something I wanted to do. If I did report it, the student would lose their clinical placement and would have to wait 6 months until the next placement, which pushes back the graduating date. A few weeks go by, and things had been fairly normal. The student would be in the clinic sooner, but would not be performing treatment. She would, however, shadow other clinicians, but Dory was still coming in later than usual. One day, as I'm walking by Hannah, I see that she's on the billing menu. In order to be on that screen, you would have to be clocked in, otherwise the system won't allow you to do it. I call her to my office again, and I sternly tell her that I had specifically said she couldn't treat patients and she doesn't have a clock-in username and password. Hannah proceeded to tell me that Dory had told her to clock in for her and start billing patients before services were rendered. Continues to state this had been going on for the whole time she had been a student. Now, I don't see the billing until the next day, but I don't have a clock of when the billing was submitted. I tell Hannah that this was strictly not allowed, but I need more information before I make a decision. I call Casey, the other clinician, into my office, and she proceeds to tell me that Hannah goes home crying and bawling every single night due to Dory threatening to fail her as a student if she didn't do all of these things for her. Dory had used her leverage in her school to strong-arm Hannah into doing all of her work while she wasn't even there. I asked Hannah if this was true, and she said yes, it was. Hannah then goes on to tell me that after the first meeting with Dory, Hannah, and myself on what they shouldn't be doing, Dory brought Hannah to the side and told her,
He's cool. He knows what's really going on, but he has to say that as a manager, so keep doing it.
At this point, I asked the student if any of her evaluation or letters of progress had been submitted to her school, so they know she's been making progress. Hannah says that Dory has never submitted the necessary paperwork to the school and has gotten away with it because of her connections to the school. So if I fired Dory, she would in turn take revenge on the student and fail her at her clinical. She would be 6 months to a year from being placed into another clinic, meaning she would be either very late or just fail and not be able to graduate. I called Katie and reported everything to her, told her my fear for the student and what she was dealing with every single day, crying and being threatened and retaliated against. Katie was also fearful of this, but also worried the liability this put on the company, also how long it had been going on. So she didn't have an answer on how to handle the situation without it affecting the student. So here was my revenge. I started watching everything Dory did, treatments, time, and complaints, etc. One weekend, Dory had to work without her student on a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. When I come in on Monday, I notice the patient having been to the hospital since Friday, but she had still been billed for services. I checked the clinician. It was Dory. How was she able to treat a person that wasn't even the clinic and also be able to bill her? So I had my reasons to fire her. I had the evidence I needed, but I still wanted a bit more. I texted Dory and asked if she had seen said patient. She reported yes, she had, but also asked if she had billed less than what she should have because she would have been able to bill more if I wanted. I told her that wasn't necessary and there was no way to bill more due to the patient being in the hospital the whole weekend she had billed. She knew from that moment what was going to happen. The next day, myself and Katie waited for Dory and she was fired on the spot just for the fraud. The student thing never came up in conversation and she had no idea we had known for a while. I had another clinician write up a whole letter on what the student was doing and that she was a good clinician and had completed the necessary work to be able to graduate. Dory was unable to get any more work done after that because the incident had been reported to the government and they had that on her license wherever she went. Her new employers would look at the license and not want to hire someone with that on their record. Last I heard, she was working at an Amazon warehouse as a manager. From a doctorate degree to a warehouse manager, after many years, I'm sure, of fraud. The best part is that student has graduated and gotten her degree and is working in the field. She's a great clinician, has done great work in her field, and I still keep in contact with her. She's very thankful for being pulled out of that situation. Am I the jerk for canceling my daughter's horse riding camp application after she canceled her brother's job application? I'll try to summarize this entire conflict that happened over a month, barely 2 months now. I have 2 kids, Mia, who's 16, and Ricky, who's 18. Mia used to work at the local coffee shop for 2 months, but didn't commit nor respect time and had no work ethic. As a result, she got fired, but she didn't accept it and kept begging her former boss to get her job back, but couldn't. She was so heartbroken over losing her first job this way, and besides, the coffee shop is, or used to be, her favorite place. Also, she was saving up to attend a horse riding camp, but didn't have enough money, so I promised to pay for her enrollment and application. A week after she got fired, she learned that her brother, Ricky, was trying to get her previous job. She went mad and kept begging me not to let Ricky apply to work at the coffee shop because her friends will find out and say the manager picked her brother over her. I thought that was overdramatic of her, and plus, Ricky is the one to decide which place to apply at, so I told her to leave it alone. Mia refused, saying if I don't do something, she will. Days later, Ricky told me and his mom that someone logged into his email and canceled his job application at the coffee shop. He said he spoke with the manager and found out someone sent him a rude email pretending to be Ricky, saying he was canceling his job application and he no longer was interested in working at the shop, adding insults to the coffee shop and the staff and the manager himself, etc. The manager kicked Ricky out and even banned him from the shop completely. I immediately shouted for Mia to come downstairs, and after pressuring her, she admitted sending the rude email to the coffee shop manager to make Ricky lose the job opportunity. She defended herself, saying she felt awful that Ricky was planning to take her place at the shop and couldn't let it happen. I was mad. I told her I'm automatically canceling her horse riding camp application and taking the money I paid back. She tried to argue and cried, saying I promised and I knew how much this meant to her, but I said that was automatic response to what she did, point blank period. No buts or ifs, besides the fact she has to go apologize to Ricky. My wife called me a jerk for not seeing where Mia was coming from and said my love for her was conditional since I promised to pay for the camp but took the money back as soon as she upset me. Mia hasn't been talking to me for 2 months except for basic words like good night, goodbye, etc. And my wife says Mia has every right to not talk to me ever again if she wanted. I wonder if I went too far or whether Mia deserved her punishment. I won't even get started on how awful Ricky felt/is feeling because he's developed trust issues ever since. Edit. A lot of people have been asking whether Mia had talked to the manager or explained what she did to her brother. The answer is no, because she refused, saying this would ruin her reputation and threatened to run away if we forced her to talk to the manager. With this threat and my wife's pressure, I had to back off, but I went to see the manager and we talked things out. But still, Ricky couldn't get the job, unfortunately. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know.
You've got 2 Karens in that house, and if I was you, I'd get rid of them both.
Am I the jerk for telling my husband I'll use my maiden name for our baby if he misses the birth? So I'm 37 weeks pregnant. Due to several health complications during my pregnancy, I've been told multiple times by multiple doctors that I might have to give birth next week as opposed to 2 weeks from now. Furthermore, that I may actually go into labor this weekend or any time leading up to it. Due to these same health complications, I'm having a C-section and my doctors do not want me laboring. So should I go into labor, they are most likely pushing me through as an emergency C-section. My husband knows all of this. However, he's holding on to the 2% chance that they gave him that the baby could last the 2 weeks. His sister is also pregnant, 4 weeks behind me, and her baby shower is this weekend. It will be over an hour away, and that's without traffic. So weeks ago, I declined for both of us because it didn't seem like a good idea. Well, despite having a long conversation, the shower, 2 days away, has come up again. It turned into a fight, as there are multiple reasons that should I go into labor, it's just a bad situation for him to be that far away. I would list them all, but character limit. Husband wants to go and support his sister and see his family, and says I'm keeping him on a short leash for something that probably isn't going to happen. I told him maybe he's right and nothing happens, but said should he choose to go and choose to take that risk, that should I go into labor, he would most likely miss the birth or be extremely late. And if he makes that choice, then I would give the baby my last name, my maiden name, versus his family name. Husband said I was the jerk for keeping him hostage and I'm always planning for worst case, and that my thoughts are going to trigger labor more than anything. I said if he chooses to not be a part of this, should I go into labor, why should the baby bear his name when he would fail on his duty as a father? He's been silent and moody since, only talking when absolutely necessary and saying that I'm trying to take everything from him. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Okay, this blew up. I'm trying to get through everything. I hear y'all on the red flags and also on the feedback on my own behavior in this. Update. Had a long doctor's appointment. Husband will not be going to the shower, as not only has it been confirmed I have to deliver next week, but I also have been put on bed rest, so that made the decision for him. He did apologize. We had to have a long conversation. His mother was pressuring a ton of this and guilt-tripping him, primarily about coming down to the shower to see his grandma, who is very old and is constantly a question as to how long she has. But we had a long conversation to which it became clear we need to be low contact with mother-in-law for the time being. She has been starting other drama lately, and this was my breaking point. Am I the jerk for refusing to move my wedding date because my brother's getting married the same day? My family is super Christian, and my brother Ross and I had always been on bad terms. It extended to our adulthood, and I stopped talking to him after he mistreated my fiance Adam, and I uninvited him from our wedding. Adam and I got engaged in 2019. We set a date for our wedding, which is on October 9th. Tim announced his girlfriend was pregnant days ago, and our parents went crazy and demanded they get married next month. Tim agreed under the condition that he choose which day the wedding will be. My parents agreed, even though they're funding the entire thing. I got a call from my uncle saying Tim is getting married on October 9th. I was shocked because this date is my wedding date. I knew he did it deliberately after I uninvited him for my wedding, and I had no intentions on attending his, but I went to see what the deal was. Adam refused to meet me at my parents' house, saying, "You take care of it and get back to me." I found most of my family there, including Tim and his girlfriend. I brought up the date and asked who chose it. Tim's girlfriend lied, saying my parents did, but my dad pointed, saying Tim did. I asked Tim why he chose the date to be the exact same date as my wedding. He made a face and said to him this is a free day, since he never planned on attending my wedding, so he thought that date fits. I explained I worked for 2 years to be able to afford inviting and including everyone, and that I chose this date first and want my whole family there. He shrugged, saying it's not his problem if people choose to attend his wedding over mine. I spoke to Mom, and she said I needed to move the date since Tim has to get married fast as his girlfriend is in her 3rd month and they have no time. I explained how much I'll lose since I already paid for the venue, invitations with original dates, and spent the money on menu and flowers. I pointed out that Tim chose this date to spite me and to divide the family and suggested they change his wedding date since they're having it at their house and paying for everything. Mom said she can since they wanted the wedding in October and Tim and his girlfriend find it fair to choose that day. Tim said I should quit making this a competition of who's getting married first, but I said that wasn't the case and I just wanted all of my family at my wedding. Mom said, if you want the whole family at your wedding, then you'll agree to move the date. You waited 2 years. Can't you wait a little longer? My aunt agreed, but I thought that it's illogical to expect me to move my wedding date and then threaten to not come if I don't. I got into a fight with Tim and I left. My parents said if I want them at my wedding, I should postpone the date and shouldn't blame them for not attending if I stick to my original date. Well, what do you think? Should OP move her wedding date or not? Please let us know.
I think your wedding would be much better off without that family, to be honest. Make sure to post lots of pictures of the wedding to social media, saying how wonderful it was to have all of your family there and all of the people who mattered. Yeah, I'm petty like that.
Am I the jerk for moving in with an unpaying tenant? I'm a 38-year-old landlord of a few single-family rentals. One of the rentals is an old, beaten-up trailer from 1955 that I rented to a single mom and her daughter, around 14 now, a couple of years ago. I purchased the property for the land and was upfront about my intentions with the trailer right from the beginning. I put the bare minimum of work into this trailer, but it's an affordable place to live for now. I charged her $600 a month and made sure she had working electric, water, hot water, heat, etc. The roof was old and leaking, and I have tarred over some leaks the past couple of years a couple of times. I told her when it comes time for a major repair, it would not be cost effective to do it, and I would be removing the trailer and placing a modular home there. Fast forward to last month. She informed me that there was a roof leak and needed more tar. Upon inspection, it is no longer feasible to keep repairing it, and it would need an entire new roof. Well, it's not cost effective to replace the new roof, so I told her that she would need to find other housing. She proceeds to play the eviction ban card and has refused to leave or pay, even the $600. I had my lawyer send her the non-habitable letter and tell her to leave by September 15th. She has not paid September rent and has not mowed the lawn since getting the letter or left. So yesterday I went over there, walked in, and started living. She called the police on me, and when they came, I showed them all of the paperwork and told the officer that she is right. I cannot legally evict her, but I am not evicting her. She is living for free and needs to pay for exclusive use of the house. If she does not pay for exclusivity, then she is my vagrant roommate. The officer sided with me and told her there is nothing he can do to make either of us leave. It's a civil matter unless something physical or threats of violence occur. She's absolutely upset and says that I'm a scumbag jerk, even though I've given her the most affordable housing in the area for almost 3 years now. Lot rent in local mobile home parks is over $500 a month, and you need to pay for the trailer and have neighbors. This is on its own acre plot. I no doubt think I'm in the right here. Someone is living on my property and not paying anything. I have every right to use said property. I'm curious as to what others think about this. I know many landlords who would change the locks while she isn't home and risk the charge. I didn't do it that way. I even told her if she kept paying $600, I would let her stay. But you are renting the land, not the house. I can't keep losing money to fix something for someone else to live. Man refuses to believe I am the office lady and insists I don't work here. It's funny because I am exactly the kind of person who is always mistaken for an employee. I guess I have that walk or whatever it is that people cue off of. I'm an office manager at a church and an atheist because life is funny, and was sitting at my desk doing my thing when a guy from our pest control company comes in. Him. Hi, I'm Freddie with Pest Control Company. I usually talk with, I can't remember her name, an older woman who works in this office. Me. Hi, Freddie. I'm Neon Fuzzball, the office manager. You probably spoke with me, actually. Him. No, it was a few months ago. The office lady was much older. She let me into the kitchen. Me. Well, I can let you into the kitchen. That's no problem. Here's my card. I hand him my office manager business card. Him. Gosh, I just can't seem to remember her name. She works here in the office. Me. Well, I work here in the office, so you'll be stuck with me from now on. Fake Midwestern laugh. Him. I always deal with the office lady. Will she be in today? Me. I'm in charge of the office, so I can take care of whatever. No, I need to talk to the office lady, the one who works here. He points at my desk. Me. There is no other office lady. The only other woman who works here is the minister. Him. But I always talk to the office lady, the older woman. Me. I'm just gonna leave your paperwork here. I'll make sure it gets to the right place. Him. I'm supposed to leave it with staff. Me. They pay me. I'm staff. Him. Oh, they pay volunteers? Me. I'll make sure the paperwork gets to the right place. Is she your mom or something? Is that why you're helping out? Guys, I swear it was me. I've been here for years. It's my office. I'm the only one who works here. I'm the only one who deals with vendors. I am the older woman he talked to. But by the end of this, he honestly had me doubting it. Eventually, he gave up and agreed to give me the paperwork to give to her when she comes in, and went to spray for bugs. I guess I'm officially an old woman, but can pass for a younger version of myself with my mask on. Grandma called the cops on me for refusing to cut the neighbor's yard. My cousin was reminding me of this story and finds it hilarious. I was repressing it so well for 7 years. A little background is, I lived with my grandmother shortly after I graduated college and my mom passed. My grandmother has a tendency for treating anyone living with her like her personal help. She comes to me one morning while I'm on my laptop asking if I'll trim the neighbor's bush. This is so she can see down the street and it's currently blocking her view. I explain multiple times that it's on their property and she needs to talk to them about it. She tells me they won't mind, and I asked to get them on the phone to confirm, but she doesn't want to disturb them. One could argue a loud power tool would also do that. We go back and forth for a good bit while she calls me lazy and entitled. After about 30 minutes, she threatens to call the cops, and I wish her the best of luck and go outside to clean my car and breathe, since I'm obviously not getting anything done inside. What got me nervous was she said something along the lines of,
I can tell the police anything, and they'll believe a little old lady over a young punk.
I planned on leaving, but didn't want to look like I was fleeing in case she actually did call them. About 15 minutes later, 2 cop cars show up, and I just roll my eyes. 2 officers go immediately inside, and one is standing outside talking to me. I calmly explain my side of the story. Apparently, she's inside, giving them a tale, claiming she's being mistreated by me. I asked the police to explain the accusations and was told she claims I'm mistreating her because I'm quiet and I keep to myself, and that I gave her a small bruise on the back of her arm above the elbow. The cop talking to me laughed it off, saying how that looks like she bumped into something, and this is the first time he's gotten a call for someone being too quiet. What's wrong with me? I think the cop who talked to me first could tell what I was dealing with and remarked how exhausted I looked. He told me they're writing it off and advised I stay somewhere else for a few days. He's dealt with calls like this before, explaining it's people who want to complain and others up in the crosshairs. Ends up, she hasn't even mentioned the bush. Her list of grievances hasn't gotten there yet. The other 2 cops had left, and the one who talked to me gave her a big lecture on how she's only allowed to trim things on her property, and some stories about serious altercations he's dealt with. I'm sure he was giving me ample time to pack, while also probably venting about this non-issue. I walk out with the officer, and she seems to think they're taking me to jail. I guess she thinks you get to take a duffel bag with you. He's making sure I have everything, including my car keys and a safe place to go. He also gives me his card in case I need any help in the future or just need to talk. As I leave, I hear her asking the officer if they'll let me out Monday, as she'll need me to run errands, and he's like, I don't know when he'll return, but you wanted him out, so we're working on that. He's smiling, but giving off a very, lady, that's your problem vibe. I stayed with my girlfriend for at least a week while getting voicemails each day from my grandmother asking if and when I'm coming home. Have you ever had a relative call the cops on you? If so, why? Please let us know.
I'm calling the cops on you if you don't hurry up and get to the next story.
Karen slapped me because I was ignoring her. I am an 18-year-old male, born completely deaf and mute. Also, I am partially blind in my left eye. I live with my sister, who's 28, who had been taking care of me since our parents have passed. Recently, she got married and went on her honeymoon, so I'm on my own for a few weeks. This happened yesterday. Usually, whenever I go out, I am accompanied by my sister due to my disability. But now, since she is on her honeymoon, I had to go out alone. There was a new supermarket opened in our area, and I needed some items, so decided to go there and grab them. My bad for wearing a red-colored shirt, almost similar to the employees working there. But if you look closely, you could see that it was not the uniform. I was at the electronics section looking for some batteries when I see an old man struggling to get some DVDs on the top shelf. Since I'm tall, I helped him. He thanked me, I can do lip reading, and went on his way. Then I began looking for the batteries. That's when I felt someone grab my left wrist. I turned around and a woman in her late 40s slapped me. She was speaking something, but I couldn't follow her lips as she spoke too fast. However, I was able to catch some words like,
you, ignore, job,
etc. So I signed to her that I am deaf. Apparently, this was a wrong move because she became more irate towards the signs. Again, she was yelling something, but I couldn't catch anything. So I took my notebook and started writing that I am deaf and mute. Before I could finish, she grabbed my notebook and pen and threw them away. Then she slapped me again and pushed me to the ground. Luckily, by this time, a store employee came to see what the commotion was about. He saw me on the ground and helped me up. Then he asked me what happened. Before I can sign to him, Karen starts to yell at the employee. I don't know what she said, as she was not facing me. After she finished, I signed to the employee that I cannot hear or speak. Fortunately, he understood and explained this to the lady, but she is still not convinced. She tries to give me again, but I moved away. Then I wrote and showed the employee to call the cops on her. The employee nodded and called the cops. Karen tried to run away, but the security caught her. The police arrived in about 10 minutes. They first talked to the employee who explained the situation about how Karen had assaulted me because she mistook me for a store employee. One police officer comes and speaks to me. I understood that he wanted my version of events, so I wrote everything down and showed it to the officer. Then they went to check the CCTV footage. Then they came back and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I gladly said yes. Karen was then placed in handcuffs and given a free ride in the back of a police cruiser. The manager then explained to me that Karen thought I worked there, and she became angry that I ignored her. She had been standing on my left side, so obviously I couldn't see her. The store manager then offered me a 50% discount on the products. I texted my sister about the events that happened, and she was livid. Oh, did I mention that my sister is a lawyer? She told me that she herself will be handling the case and would see that Karen would get maximum time. Court date is in around 40 days. I will update about it after court. Edit. I noticed many were asking about masks. She was indeed wearing one, but during that encounter, she had it on under her chin and was not covering the nose or her mouth. Also, lawyers in India can represent their family in court as long as they are not directly involved in it and the judge is not a relative to the lawyer. Karen boss refuses to give me a raise. She really ends up regretting it. This story happened earlier this year, but the real consequences came last week. That's why I've decided to share it now. Context. I, 35 female, live in a big city in Western Europe. After graduating college, I was hired as an office assistant in a big company. Let's call it Happy Place. I did my last internship as a student there, and it went so well that I got hired just a few weeks after getting my master's degree. Over the next 10 years, I worked my way up from an assistant to office manager to head of one of the biggest departments. I was not paid a lot of money, but it was above average and the benefits were great. But the main reason I stayed for so long was the people who worked there. Over the years, I had made quite a few friends there, and by the year 2020, I was one of the most experienced people working at Happy Place. My colleagues often came to me for advice about how to do this or that, and I also had a great relationship with the big bosses. And the cherry on top was that I had the best boss someone could hope for. Let's call her Maggie. Maggie was 10 years older than me, and she was Wonder Woman. She is nice, professional, cool, helpful, and has a heart of gold. I've worked with her during my whole time at Happy Place, and the last 4 years she was my direct supervisor. I loved her. Then in 2020, a few things happened almost at the same time, and over the course of 6 months, Happy Place turned into Sad Place. First, the company hired a new HR lady, Karen. She was the worst. She treated everyone below her level of responsibilities, which is pretty much 99% of the staff, as if they were lesser people, talked down to everyone, and constantly made changes in the HR policies. She implemented quite a few new rules, which led to us losing some of the benefits that we liked, like free lunches, paid time off to go to the doctor's office during office hours, etc. But the CEO of the company trusted her for some reason, and soon he stopped taking meetings with the staff, making Karen the only person who could make decisions regarding the staff, which meant that no one could actually complain about her, and we slowly started feeling helpless. Second, Maggie was promoted to a different field, the one she actually wanted to work in, so I cannot be mad at her for leaving. And she got replaced by Susan as my new supervisor. Susan was cool, but she was my age and with less experience, which did not make much sense. So even though on paper she was the one in charge, I was the one constantly explaining to her how things worked and what needed to be done while she took the credit. And lastly, lockdown. Our line of work was highly impacted, so the whole year of 2020, I was working under an enormous amount of stress, taking almost no vacation time, doing my job and some of Susan's job, as at some point she went on medical leave, and some of my coworkers' jobs, as some colleagues cracked under the tension and quit, but no one got hired to replace them. But despite all of the hard work, I did not receive any lockdown-related bonus, which was weird since some of my coworkers let it slip that they got a 1,000 euro bonus for achievements during lockdown. The compliance. So, given all the events of 2020, in January of 2021, I decided that enough was enough. When it was time for my annual review, I decided that I would negotiate better conditions for myself, because as much as I loved my job and the people I worked for, I couldn't keep working so much for so little pay. As Susan was still on medical leave, Karen was the only one who did my annual review, despite the fact that I've only met her a few times and we've never directly worked together. In preparation for the meeting, I've made a list of the things I've been putting up with and a list of reasons why I should get a slight pay bump. I was asking for a 15% pay increase, but was happy to accept a 10. It was not about the money, it was about knowing that there was at least a chance that management valued me as an employee and that I was not just some sucker who did so much for not even a thank you. After making my case to Karen and carefully explaining to her what my job was and what I was actually doing, I asked her the dreaded question. She looked at me, smiled, and said,
OP, I appreciate everything you've been doing for the company, and we value you as an employee, but your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much.
I was speechless. I admit, I was so angry and hurt that I felt tears coming up to my eyes. But I took a deep breath, calmed myself down, and said, "Thank you for your input, Karen, but I cannot keep working in these conditions. It's not worth it." Karen rolled her eyes and replied,
"Then you can quit, but I will be sorry to see you go."
And quit I did. You see, there were two things Karen did not know. First, as explained, I was a highly valued employee with a great reputation and over 10 years of experience in the field. And our field reputation is important, and for the last 2 years, I've been receiving job offers from competitors. I always refused because I loved working for Happy Place, but since the events of 2020, I started taking interviews, checking what else was out there. And just before my meeting with Karen, I did an interview with Cool Company, who offered me a 60% raise to do the same job as I did for Happy Place. Second, remember how I said I took almost no vacation days in 2020? So by January of 2021, I had over 2 months of paid leave available. I checked with the HR, not Karen, the week before my annual review, and they confirmed to me in writing that I was free to take my vacation days whenever I wanted. So I did exactly what Karen told me to. I quit. I put in my 2 months notice and took my 2 months vacation, which meant that I came to work for only 1 day to clean out my office and say goodbye before leaving for good. I felt bad because I left so many of my colleagues in a really bad position since they now had to do my job, but they all assured me that they understood and that they would have done the same thing. After my 2-month paid vacation, I started working at Cool Company, and I've been here ever since. The aftermath. I kept in touch with a few friends from Happy Place, and they regularly informed me of what was going on over there. It seems that me quitting was the push that many of my coworkers needed to also make the final leap and quit. As I said, the conditions went from great to bad since Karen took office. Also, the fact that I quit so abruptly got the attention of the CEO, as we had a good relationship. He asked Maggie, who was aware of the whole story with Karen, about it, and she told him the truth. About me not getting the lockdown bonus, about Karen speaking down to staff members, about her telling me to quit if I wanted to. The CEO finally opened his eyes and launched an investigation into Karen's actions. He personally did interviews with some staff members and heard stories about her from people from many different departments. He also investigated the lockdown bonus story, and it turns out she only gave the lockdown bonus to her friends from different departments and a very generous one to herself. Plus, since I've quit, no one was actually able to do my job, and the fact that Karen was responsible for me leaving made her responsible for the consequences. So after reviewing everything, the CEO decided to terminate Karen's contract. Rumor has it, the whole staff of Happy Place celebrated this joyous occasion. The cherry on top. Last week, my boss at Cool Company walked into my office and said, "OP, you know Jen from HR is retiring soon, right? We did interviews to replace her, and one of the candidates is Karen. She seems competent, but asks for quite a lot of money. You and her worked together, right? What's she like? Do you think she deserves to be paid more than we initially offered?" I said, "Boss, you got a few minutes?" "Great. Let me tell you a story." After hearing my very honest opinion of Karen, Boss Man laughed and said, "Okay, good to know. I think we will tell her that she's not the right fit for us. Thanks, OP." As soon as Boss Man left my office, I sent an email to my friend Lori from HR, who was in charge of replying to candidates. I also told her the story and asked her to keep me informed if there is any development with the whole Karen applies to Cool Company thing. A few hours later, I get an email from Lori. Turns out, she copied me to her official reply to Karen. It read, "Dear Karen, thank you for your interest in working for Cool Company. After careful consideration, we regret to inform you that in our opinion, your responsibilities and your abilities are not worth that much. I brought Lori a big chocolate cookie the next day. Thank you all for reading. Have a great day. And remember, don't let Karens ruin your sense of self-worth." Sell your property to someone who isn't my daughter? I'll get you expelled. When I was in university, I bought myself a longboard to get around campus. A lot of the students were doing it, and I thought it would be easy. Well, after a few falls, I changed my mind and switched to a bike. I figured that if I wasn't going to be using it, I might as well sell it to someone who would. I posted it on Facebook Marketplace at a good price and had a few people interested right away. The first person to contact me was happy to meet my price and available to meet right away. I updated the listing to pending offer and drove out to meet the buyer. She likes the board and purchased it with no bargaining. When I got home, I had a message from a high school girl asking if it was still available. Me: "Sorry, no, someone just bought it." Her:
No, you have to go get it back. I love this longboard. It's perfect for me.
Me: "Sorry, it's sold. I'm no longer the owner. I don't have it." Her:
Ask for it back. Tell the buyer that you changed your mind. Offer $20 for their trouble, and I'll up the price.
I wanted to end the argument, so I said I'd follow up with the new owner and ask them if they would be interested in selling it to the high schooler a little more. I contacted the buyer to let her know that someone was inquiring about the longboard and was willing to pay a little more. I asked her if she'd like the contact details in case she wanted to make an easy $20. The new owner thought about it and said no, she wasn't interested. Fair enough. So I contacted the high school girl to let her know that I checked with the new owner and they were not interested in selling. Her:
This is your fault. I feel like you just kicked me in the gut. You're a terrible person.
I wasn't in the mood for further chatting and blocked her email. Fast forward 1 week and I had an email from her mother entitled, "Mom, Karen,
My daughter tells me that you promised to sell her a longboard, but changed your mind and sold it to someone else. That's unacceptable."
Me: "Nope, your daughter asked me if I could sell her a longboard after I had already sold it to someone else. The posting noted that it was pending pickup when your daughter reached out to me. Sorry for the confusion."
No, you will get my daughter that longboard. You're going to compensate her for the pain and suffering you've caused. You'll be giving the longboard to my daughter for free.
Me: "Look, lady, I don't own the longboard anymore. Someone else bought it."
Then go get it. I know the dean of the university. If you don't deliver the longboard to me by the end of today, I'll get you expelled. Do you really want to lose your chance at having a good job over a longboard? You'll do the right thing, or else.
I stopped listening because that was absolutely ridiculous. I didn't block the email though, and the next evening I had another treat.
I went to complain to the dean. Your time at the university is limited. While I was there, my daughter saw someone riding her longboard today. How dare you sell it? You'll be sending us $500 for a brand new one. After all, you won't be needing your money for tuition next semester. This is my address. You better deliver that money or else. What is your phone number? Text me at this number when you're coming.
Well, that night I went for a little ride and drove by their home. I took a photo of the 2015 BMW 228i convertible in their driveway and posted it on Craigslist for $500. I asked that interested buyers text entitled Mom's number and promptly blocked her email. My friend texted a few days later to ask about the car. Apparently, entitled Mom is responding to everyone thinking that it's me and demanding that they come up with the $500 and a new longboard for her little angel, but that she's not selling the car. The dean never called me to his office. I graduated without issue. Update. Entitled sister wants me to support her and the baby she's about to have. Quick summary. I have two half-sisters, Mary and Karen. Karen used to live with me rent-free and decided to offer me up to her creepy boyfriend like a side dish. I kicked her out and she went to live with him. She got pregnant, he threw her to the curb, and now she wants me to take care of her and the baby she's about to have. Now to today. Mary called me this morning to have brunch and discuss things related to Karen. She told me she understood I don't want to be part of the mix, but she really wanted it to be discussed, and after I can just walk out. I know Mary, and I know she's just trying to leave everything in order before she leaves the state. She's the peacekeeper of my siblings. I agreed on the condition that there was no way Karen would come home with me. Mary just said, if she tries to follow you, I'll drag her out myself. So I dressed up and off I went to brunch with my sisters. I'll skip the pleasantries and dumb, friendly family look Karen attempted. Once we were done eating and just having coffee, Mary set all the cards on the table. She explained she couldn't take Karen with her out of state because she's getting married to her longtime girlfriend and they can only afford a one-bedroom in her new city. She also said Karen was insane if she thought Mary would allow her to live with me, even if she had the power to make me take Karen back in. That Karen was lucky she even let her stay with her for these past few days. She told her the only reason we were doing this was because her mother had begged her to at least put Karen somewhere safe or find a solution for the pregnancy. So she turned to me and asked me, as the most stable economically, if there was anything I would be willing to help with. I might be a jerk for this, feel free to roast me, but I basically said I would only give money for 3 things. 1. Termination and a hotel room. 2. A ticket back to home country so she can live with her mother or aunt and get free health care. 3. A ticket to our eldest brother's home country so she can live with him because I know he will take her in. I also said she had the option to put the baby up for adoption, but I would not be offering her a place to stay or a way to get medical care out of my pocket. I gave her some links to nonprofits she could use. Karen started crying, saying I was trying to take away her baby and being a bad sister, that a good sister would open up her home and help care for her baby, that I never deserved to have the money I have. Most of my money is from inheritance on my mother's side of the family, so not sure how she would have gotten anything. That I was spoiled by my mother because she had money. We did, because after our father left my mother and I with nothing, she made a company from scratch. She kept babbling and making a scene. Then she said something that actually hurt me.
You are just mad because you will never get pregnant.
Yes, I happen to be infertile. No, I can't get treatment for it. It is what it is. I've already accepted it, but it still hurts. Mary knew this was a low blow for me and basically told Karen, one more stupid word like that and she'll be sleeping on the streets tonight. I didn't cry or anything, just stared. Karen stopped her crying and muttering and seemed to get an idea. She looked at me straight and told me to adopt her baby. I laughed at that. I told her she was insane if she thought I would adopt her baby. I don't want her in my life, let alone her ex. I don't blame the baby, but I have absolutely no intentions to be part of that child's life. I was about to go off on Karen just for even thinking I would consider that as an option, but Mary stopped me in time. She simply said to Karen, "You have the option she gave you. Termination or go back to home country. Either way, you can't stay here. You are not legal and your immigration status affects us if you were to live with us. I could lose my job and OP could lose her resident status. You have until next Friday to choose. If none of these options work, you will have to find your own solution without us. I don't want you anywhere near my little sister. You put her at risk of being hurt. You're lucky I have an empty room for 1 more week for you to crash in, but after, I don't want to see you in person. We can keep in touch by Facebook or phone. You've lost the right to spend time in person with either of us." I just stared at Mary. She's very quiet and normally the most reserved of us, so this was not expected. Mary paid, didn't even wait for the change, and left Karen with enough to get a taxi home. Mary grabbed me by the arm and took me out. I didn't know how much I needed someone to just protect me for a change, but I did cry a little on the way out from just pure relief I had one older sister that still looked out for me. We decided to go for ice cream after, like we did as kids when bad things happened, and discussed our plans to spend holidays and vacations together. Mary's girlfriend also joined us for ice cream, and the whole time she just made jokes about how sad she's going to be without her moving table. She's much taller than me, and it's a running gag with us. Nothing too dramatic, thankfully. Mary and her girlfriend are going to come later for dinner with me. Depending how this mess ends, I'll try to update, but at this point, I think it's pretty much done. Not sure if Karen will take any of the options we gave her or just do her own thing. Regardless, I have no intentions of putting my money for anything but what I said I would. And yes, Mary is my hero, if anyone is curious. Karen, the building manager, probably regrets her wording. I live in a housing cooperative. I have no idea if there is something equivalent in other countries, but I live in Norway. It's essentially where you own your own apartment, but the cooperative owns the buildings and the land. If you're going to make changes to the building, you'll have to apply for a permit. Otherwise, it's generally do as you please, as long as you don't bother your neighbors. Anyways, I put a small greenhouse on my private patio, as many others had done, but not this exact type. This was an aluminum construction, not a frame with a loose plastic cover kind. The building manager, who is best described as a triple Karen, threw a fit. She actually watched me spending 3 days assembling the greenhouse. Then the next day, she called me and threw a fit. Not because I put up a greenhouse, but because I had used screws to fasten it to the patio for stability. Apparently, I was not allowed to use screws on the floorboards, as this was considered changes to the building in her mind. And I had destroyed the floorboards. Never mind the whole patio was built with, wait for it, screws through the floorboards. Screws in the walls were okay, she had told me, in response to me asking why she had put up shelves on her patio herself, but not the floorboards. Apparently, the difference was monumental, and everyone should know this intuitively. Nowhere, literally nowhere, does it say fastening things to the floorboards or putting screws in the floorboards is not allowed. Not in my house rules, my contract, or in the National Housing Cooperatives law. But she was furious I had done this. I took a deep breath, and as I am quite creative, I immediately thought of a workaround. I'll just put it on wheels then. I made a big number of saying that fastening was essential because otherwise the greenhouse would not be stable enough to withstand wind. She said she understood this, but I had now ruined the co-op's property, and this was a really serious matter. She told me to send an application for a permit to see if she could find a way to get approval from the board, but she could not guarantee I could keep it, she said with the fakest of sympathies. So I sent the application with photos saying what I had done and that I didn't think I had to apply to do this, as I never considered putting in a prefabricated greenhouse would be seen as changes to the building. My application was rejected as I anticipated, but she worded the rejection exactly as I hoped she would. I was not allowed to put in a fastened greenhouse, and she probably thought she'd be clever when she included that I was not allowed to put the greenhouse on my front lawn either. I had worked the "it needs to be fastened to be stable" angle hard, because I hoped she, as the Karen she is, would fall for that reverse psychology. So I proceeded to put the greenhouse on wheels. I made a frame from 2x4s and put 8 small furniture wheels under the frame. I then lifted and screwed the greenhouse onto the frame. I put some boards on the sides just above the ground to stop the draft. Boom! Mobile greenhouse. I can slide it all over the patio. I put some hooks on the walls and used transport straps to secure the whole thing to the wall for stability. The walls were okay to put screws in, remember? So in effect, my greenhouse is now in the exact same location, 4 inches taller, and with ugly blue ribbons tying it to the wall. And the patio now has 22 open screw holes ready to be filled with rainwater in the fall. But oh well, as she's repeatedly told me, it's not my patio. Then I sent an orientation email to the building manager with photos and videos of the sliding greenhouse with the rest of the board members on copy, where I explained in detail what I had done and how every step was in compliance with the rejection email I had received, which I of course included. I said the greenhouse was now to be considered a piece of mobile patio furniture, just like my sofa and wheels were, and that I now considered this subject to be a closed matter. I've not heard a single word from any of them. It's been over a week. I think I got her. I can't imagine she'll find a loophole that lets her legally dictate what patio furniture is allowed and not in the co-op, since the patios are stated to be for every apartment owner's private usage. So when Christmas comes, I'm planning to decorate the greenhouse with lights, make it pretty, because every time Karen steps out of her front door, she has to face my patio where she's looking straight at my greenhouse. The least I can do is make it pretty for her, right? Edit. Thanks for the awards and upvotes. I'm humbly appreciative. Some background. I'm 39, female. I've lived here for 10 years without a single complaint. Karen is the new building manager. Being the Karen she is, which means highly narcissistic, she's using my greenhouse as a way to establish her newfound authority. Make an example. I didn't get her permission, so the greenhouse got to go. It's not about the holes. It was just the only argument she could use to get me to take it down, especially since I had argued hard that it needed to be fastened for stability. And I'm going to take care of the holes. I'll either fix the holes or change the few damaged floorboards, and I told her this on the phone. The damage is no big deal either way. The greenhouse is my therapy, I suffer from PTSD, so keeping my therapy is kind of a big deal to me. Not trying to get sympathy, just saying why I decided to fight her on this. Rude neighbor gets a taste of his own medicine. Me and my wife found this gorgeous house, not yet on the market. Realtor had told us we owned all this nice forested land around it. We were sold. Once we were dealing with the logistics of buying, found out we actually didn't own all of this land and that someone would be building a huge house right next to us. For context, our driveway runs up the side of our house and the side is really like the front. We decide, whatever, can't be that bad. So guy takes 2 years to build the massive house that dwarfs ours and destroys our view. But whatever, we play nice the whole time, letting him use our power and water. We have to get along after all. I bite my tongue over all the inconveniences and him doing me over and living through construction. Kept things on really good terms. When we were talking, this guy would tell me stories of times he had to move because of fights with neighbors, trying to look tough, I guess. I didn't think much of it. It all started one day in the winter. The way my driveway is and how close his house is, he told me I could blow the snow on the small section on his side in between. I was very mindful not to hit the house with the snow and everything. One day out of nowhere, he shows up at my door telling me to keep my snow on my own side. Okay, whatever. Fine, be a jerk. I'm not going to get into it with you. From there, it's him telling me he owns half my driveway because it's on his property and he's going to rip it up and put up a fence and all his other crap. So I try and work with him. He ended up not doing anything but held that over our heads to get his way on everything. Makes me move my shed, and it's like a mini house. Makes me install 180 feet of French drain over a bit of water runoff from my driveway. Meanwhile, he's putting hundreds of gallons of water on my property from his 2 downspouts on my side and doesn't do anything. One day, he decides to put up cameras and points them at our house from multiple angles. This bothers us, but we don't show it. Until a couple months later, he's out there moving them and adjusting angles to get better views of our main hangout areas in my yard driveway where me and my friends and family hang out. So my wife asks him if he can just not point them directly at us. He brushes her off, so I go and have a word with him. This turned into a huge yelling match about all the crap. At this point, it's clear that we both hate each other. The only reason I can figure is that they are super religious, like have 8 kids and just super religious. I'm covered in tattoos, piercings, ride motorcycles, and listen to all sorts of metal music. Though I'm no idiot, I am respectful and keep my noise to a minimum. So I'm assuming he just didn't like my style. Anyway, after the camera fight, I decided I would start blasting my music in my garage with my garage doors open day in and day out anytime I got the chance. And I played some of the most morbid music to mess with him. On top of that, I got a drone and started flying around his house. Started doing tricks with my bike in my driveway, just being noisy. After a couple months, near Christmas, we see a for sale sign go up. Couple more months down the road and it's my birthday. They're loading trucks and leaving. Best birthday present I could ask for. Though it ticked me off that he brought a Christmas gift basket and my wife accepted it. I took this as my pro-revenge win. The gift basket thing just shows how crazy he was. He would do crap like that. Gift baskets, waving at us, saying hi, then turn around and do something to start a problem. I'll never understand it, but I'm glad it's over. New neighbors are quiet and never home. Workaholics, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Life is good. Must give 48-hour notice. We've moved several times for my husband's career, so I haven't really had a career of my own, just a series of jobs. Some were great, some were crappy. This happened at one of the crappy places where I worked as a lowly customer service rep. I was late 40s, very dependable, and my manager, Ann, called me her ideal employee. Never had any customer complaints, never tardy, sick once in 3 years, submitted many time and money-saving ideas, always worked late when asked. I worked 32 hours a week, Monday through Thursday, so I was typically the one she asked to work late since everyone else was full-time and no overtime was involved if I worked a few extra hours. I was having migraines and my doctor could see me the next afternoon. I asked Ann if I could leave 2 hours early the next day to go to the doctor. She said work was slow that week and no one else was off, so yes. But since I was giving less than 48 hours notice, it counted as an unexcused and I would get a written warning. I said that I was giving 24 hours notice and we were slow and fully staffed, so I just didn't get why there would be a warning. 4 warnings in 6 months, and you were terminated. They didn't care if you had a doctor's excuse. Tardies were a warning. Calling in sick, returning late from lunch, it was not difficult to get 4 in 6 months. Anne said that it was a matter of her having to shift the schedule around. It was inconsiderate to not plan ahead, and she just didn't want to set a precedent and be taken advantage of. I went to the appointment, got the warning, and was ticked off about it. But I decided I would be happy to comply with their petty policy in my own malicious way. I didn't have to wait very long. A couple weeks later, Anne came to me an hour before closing and said she had a stack of orders that had come in via Amazon and they needed to be put in that day. The phones had been busy, so the reps who normally entered orders didn't get to them. Could I stay and put them in? I said I really had no other plans, but I'd been thinking about what she'd said about giving 48 hours notice when asking someone to change their schedule, and she was right. It does lead to them taking advantage of you. So I would be willing to stay late 2 days from now, but I can no longer stay late on such short notice.
But I didn't know that I'd need you until just now.
Oh, I totally understand. It's like when I was having migraines and needed to get into the doctor as soon as possible. I think I deserve the same consideration that you deserve. If you give me 48 hours notice, I'm happy to stay. She was speechless. She had to pay someone else overtime to stay. A couple days later, she thought she'd get back at me when she told me that I could not remain part-time and would have to start working Fridays the following week. I calmly told her that the following Thursday would be my last day then. By that afternoon, she changed her mind and I could stay on my current schedule. Karen left me a 5% tip, ends up regretting it. I've been a server for 2 to 3 years now. I'm usually pretty good at keeping my temper in line. I've had a rough summer between the off-season and health issues, so I virtually made no money from mid-June, mid-September, which doesn't help pay my bills. We all typically have a good feeling about certain tables and if they're going to tip or not. I started serving a 3-top, and I just had the vibes that they were comment tippers. They ordered multiple expensive drinks, ordered food, complained about, and I fixed and got them entirely new meals and made jokes with them and followed exactly what they wanted. They had 2 friends join them towards the end of their meal, and I was really hoping another one would show up because I would be able to add an automatic gratuity if there were a party of 6. The night goes on, and they've been with me for a total of 3 hours. I went to my boss and asked him if we could add the auto gratuity because their bill was $350 and climbing. And I just had this horrible sinking feeling that they were going to stiff me. He said we couldn't, and even my other coworkers were like, hey, they're going to do her over. Time comes for the bill and they split it. One girl handed me a $20 bill and the others signed their slips. Our policy is to grab the checks while they're on the table after being signed to say a pleasant goodnight spiel. I do so and see how they all didn't leave me a single tip. I got a 5% tip for 3 hours of work and lost out on $100 between them not tipping and having to still tip out. I was absolutely fuming. So I went and took the $20 back and put it back on their table and said, have a good night, and walked back inside. A few minutes later, I get all 5 of them running in, yelling at me about how disrespectful and rude I am. I blankly looked at them and told them, I'm sorry you perceived it that way, but I find it disrespectful and disgusting to tip a server 5% when they just busted their tail for you for 3 hours. They tried to yell at me and say, why didn't I come and ask for more tip then? Why be shady? I said that I shouldn't have to come and ask why I wasn't given a proper tip, and when you yourself told me how amazing of a server I was for you, and that maybe next time, don't let your man order 6 $25 drinks. If you can't afford to tip, don't go out to eat. My manager was there for the whole thing and kinda let me say my piece at last. Their only complaint to him was me slamming the money down on the table. They even confirmed I was a good server and yet still left me nothing. But it felt so good to tell them off because this is not okay to do to servers. Edit to add, if all you're going to say is your boss owes you a living wage, seriously, stop. I'm legit doing the absolute best I can at a place that typically makes me good money. I can't fix the US system, so stop blaming my owner when he's legit trying to pay us more hourly currently. Well, this is Red Lobster, and we do things the Red Lobster way. This happened several years ago, and I am forever relieved I don't work in a restaurant anymore. Solidarity to all kitchen workers for the endless BS you have to deal with. At the time, I was working in the kitchen as an assembler. This can be one of the most clutch positions on the line, as you take all the food being prepared by the other cooks and organize it into tickets that can be taken out into the dining room. Accordingly, it is often a bottleneck for food leaving the kitchen. If you have a slow assembler, cooked food goes bad under the heating lamps. Grilled salmon dries out, fries become soggy, linguine Alfredo hardens into concrete. Really horrific stuff. It is imperative that food not sit in the window. I was working a weekday lunch shift, which is normally pretty slow. We must have provoked the wrath of restaurant gods on this day though, because out of nowhere, the store got hit with a tsunami of customers. I could just barely make out the other cooks through the clouds of shrimp scampi, fryer grease, and cheddar bay biscuits flying through the air. I knew the crap blizzard was headed my direction and began putting empty plates up in the window with the shape of each ticket that was to leave the kitchen, a technique I had learned to help survive times like this. On the other side of the window, coordinating the servers, was my manager, Jerkface. Shouldn't use his real name. Actually, let's call him Bob instead. Bob was a bit hyperactive and had an irritating tendency to micromanage kitchen processes, a problem compounded by his not knowing how to run a kitchen. When I began putting empty plates in the window so that the incoming interstellar-sized wave of seafood had something to land on, he stopped me.
"What are you doing?"
Bob asked. "I'm putting the plates and their sides in the window because we're about to have a very high volume of food coming through," I replied.
"Well, this is Red Lobster, and here we do things the Red Lobster way. We plate the food when the food is ready, and we don't put the sides on early."
I tried explaining that the Red Lobster way was designed by sentient suits and ties, physically incapable of holding a spatula, that our sacred way, as dictated in the good book of employee training, had gone out in the trenches of last year's endless shrimp special, that while I appreciated the job, I wasn't prepared to go out at the hands of this rush to uphold its most obscure tenets. But he wasn't having any of it. Bob insisted that I take the plates out of the window and only pass him plates and tickets that were 100% completed. Knowing full well that Bob was flying us by the book into a storm of crap, I put on a raincoat, rubbed some Vicks under my nose, and braced for the impact. 30 minutes later, the window was chaos. Finished food was left in the wings of the window, while I plated up one finished ticket at a time. Bob was equal parts confused and furious, like a toddler whose toy was suddenly taken away.
"What's this food waiting on?"
he cried, gesturing towards a shriveled up steak and its associated sides. "Well, that order is waiting on some fried shrimp, and I need to wait for the ticket to be complete before I plate it up."
"Why is the ticket missing fried shrimp?"
"Unfortunately, I'm not manning the fryer, sir, so I don't know." This continued for the better part of an hour. It seemed like every ticket was missing one little thing that kept it from leaving the kitchen. After the rush had passed, Bob approached me with the twitchy, nervous energy of a hyper-caffeinated, insecure manager who needed to assert his dominance over the underpaid crew of some bunk seafood restaurant.
"Can I, speak to you in the walk-in for a moment, username's Rue?"
"Sure thing." We walked to the cooler as I struggled to remember how to fight off an attacker.
"So, what happened back there?"
Bob asked, arms folded, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "You said we should follow the system, and we did," I replied, mentally noting that he was standing in front of the walk-in's only exit.
"But there were a lot of missed items on those tickets. We had food dying in the window."
"I saw it. Yeah, it was pretty bad."
"So, why was the food missing?"
"I don't know. I wasn't cooking the food. I was assembling it. I'm the assembler." This line of questioning continued, with Bob trying to somehow pin this mess on me, while I insisted that I did exactly what was asked of me. After not being able to move past this point for several minutes, Bob made some sweeping statement about
"doing better next time,"
and then left. Incidentally, the next time I was assembling and Bob was on the other side of the window, nothing was said about the Red Lobster way, and the rush went smoother, albeit with some hotter plates and servers having to return for delayed items. I guess we ended up doing better after all. My housemaid keeps throwing out my food. She says it's gross. I'm losing my mind here. I need perspective. 6 months ago, I moved in with a friend and her friend. My friend is chill. Her friend is nice, but is super clean freak. My friend warned me about that, so I've been on my game keeping everything extra clean, though we had some small differences of opinion. Example, I left 2 textbooks on the kitchen table overnight after studying, and the next morning she told me I shouldn't leave mess on the table. Okay, I didn't think a couple of books was a mess, but cool, no worries, won't do it again. The problem is the fridge. One of Jane's weekly, self-appointed chores is to clean out the fridge. I don't think a fridge needs to be cleaned weekly, but hey, her call. Thing is, she keeps throwing out my food. We have different ideas about how long food is still good. She's adamant leftovers shouldn't be eaten after 3 days. I eat leftovers for up to a week. I'm pretty generous to my vegetables with how long I still eat them. Like, if my carrots get a little soft or my kale's a bit wilted, they're not perfect, but they're still good for a stew. Let me stress, they are not going bad or gross or smelly or moldy or any of the terrible things you can imagine in a shared fridge. I've never left actual bad food in there. They're just not supermarket shiny. My food budget is tight. I'm not gonna waste food. We just had a blow up because I went to eat the stir fry I cooked Monday night. Gone. Jane's thrown out my leftovers before because she claims it's gone bad after a few days, or thrown out unpretty vegetables that I know were fine because I looked at them that very day, but she had claimed that they were gross. I've asked her before not to throw out my food just because she personally wouldn't eat it, because it's fine. I asked her about the stir fry. She said she threw it out because it's been there for weeks. Jane, it hasn't been there for weeks. I cooked it on Monday night.
It has. It's been there for weeks. It's disgusting. I got rid of it.
Jane, I literally cooked it on Monday. I know I did because I was there. Please stop throwing out my food. It's fine. You don't have to eat it, but you can't just toss my stuff. She went off about how it's disgusting, the food I keep in there, and it's going to make me sick. It doesn't. And how she's doing me a favor and I should be thanking her for cleaning the fridge weekly because it's disgusting that we wouldn't do it if she wasn't here. I can't even deal with this, so I just calmly said, Jane, the fridge isn't disgusting. Please leave my food alone, and walked upstairs because I just couldn't handle getting into a screaming match about it. She went to my friend, going off about how rude I was to walk out on a discussion and how my food is gross. I know I might be looser than the others on when food is still good, but I don't think I'm doing anything gross. My food is not gone rotten, smelly, or moldy. Am I being gross to have leftovers in the fridge for a week? Or vegetables that are a bit soft? ETA. Thanks, and lots of people have suggested a mini fridge in my room, which I get is one solution. I just don't think I should have to. Carting my food up and downstairs from the kitchen to cook a meal if my roommate is being unreasonable seems uncool and expensive for me to get one. We do have separate shelves in the fridge, so she knows my leftovers are mine. To be honest, I think she targets them because she assumes they're gross. They are sealed, but we all put a special portion of our vegetables in the bottom chiller drawer together, but she knows which ones are hers and which are mine. I guess I was just paranoid because I grew up in not the cleanest house, and we did really stretch our food and sometimes did have stuff so gross in the fridge as a kid, so even though I don't let food go gross now, I was worried I'm crossing some kind of unspoken boundary about acceptable food to keep in the fridge because my house and fridge were messy growing up. ETA 2. My God, people. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't being inadvertently gross with my old veggies and my 5 days leftovers. Not go nuclear. Y'all are savage. Remind me not to mess with your food. ETA 3. Okay, thank you all. Label your food seems to be the winner and also the most sensible, easiest, and non-conflict inducing advice. Although I am finding my petty streak, so maybe all the labels will just say, it's fine, Jane, leave it alone. Make parts non-stop, but never get them shipped? Okay, boss. I still have nightmares from working in this company, so I thought I would share one of my stories. Background. I worked at a factory that I absolutely loved. Loved the boss. My manager, now called head AH, really knew his work and would teach anyone that showed enthusiasm. But then the company merged, and we suddenly had in my section 3 managers trying to prove their worth, who all turned into massive jerks. The place quickly turned into every man for himself. For example, the 10 minutes I spent patching up a coworker before he went to the hospital came at the cost of being screamed at, then forced to stay back to make up for my timesheets being out. Can tell more tales of this another time. And while my section needed 5 people to run, the way they managed it, people walked out, and it came down to me alone. I would have 3 different managers come to yell at me, but not help or hire people to do the work. Seriously, they would come in, scream, and run out. I was desperate to quit, but living paycheck to paycheck, things were really hard. My role was to run a CNC router, but had to run 2 of them as I'm now alone, complete the parts, and get it ready to send to the customer. Often, from start to ship, my parts are only handled by me. This is not normal. Normally, you would have someone to help complete the parts. As I am alone, I have to keep up with the machine. It makes sense to have the machine off at times during the day while I get things completed. You could expect a screaming if the place was messy at the end of the day. Ballistic screaming. Now for the story. Keep in mind this is 15 plus years ago, so it might not be 100% accurate. I had machined a stack of parts, and there was no way I could, in my right mind, make more parts until I had done the post-processing and had these parts ready to be shipped. There were things that had to be sent that day. Head manager.
Why aren't the machines running?
Me. I'm really behind on this and…
Why aren't the machines running?
Me. This is really urgent. Let me get this part sent and I can run the machines after I finish this. Now, absolutely screaming and throwing things.
Get the machines running, Anon.
He starts berating me and saying that the post-processing wasn't important and running the machines was the most important, and that I had to keep the machines running no matter what, and that post-processing can be done by anyone in the factory, but I'm the only one who can run the machines, so I have to run them and keep them running no matter what. Cue malicious compliance. For the entire week, I did exactly what he asked. I ran both machines. I would load the programs for the next job while the machine was still running its existing job. Tool holders were lined up and ready to go. While the machines are running, I would sprint from the machines to the material racks to get materials I needed for the next job ready. I ran those machines non-stop. I did 0 post-processing as I did not have a spare minute. Nothing was finished to stage where it could be shipped. There wasn't even time for breaks. I made sure those machines ran without a minute of downtime. By the end of the week, I had machined so many parts that I had filled up 3 massive workbenches. These benches were something like 3 meters by 1.5 meters long, and I just kept stacking the piles as high as I could. The best thing is that the urgent work is now on the bottom of this pile, and the work due next week was on top. This is literally hundreds of different customers' orders. I don't remember the hours I pulled at this exact time, but I have done shifts such as 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 80-hour weeks without overtime pay were usual for me. When crap finally hit the fan about a week of not being sent out, Head Jerk comes to talk to me, and you could see something snap in his head while he was trying to talk.
Hey, Anon.
Me. Sorry, not now. I have to run the machine. I just ignored him, and I kept setting up the next job.
Stop. Just stop.
He starts by trying to ask me where this job is, and I'm just gesturing. It's under there, man. The look on his face was priceless. He starts berating me on how there is no point turning the machines on at all unless the work is completed all the way and sent. He really got stuck into me, but then he's like,
just leave the machine off for now and start completing these jobs.
But then we both start on completely different parts, and within a minute he sees me and instantly,
get the machines running, Anon.
And I think it's here where he realized that it's all his fault. And as I'm walking back to the machine, I swear he looks up at his roof, screams,
no!
And it's as if his soul has left his body. And I'm laughing hard remembering this. He yells at me,
leave it off.
And as I start finishing parts again, he looks at me and he's about to say the line again, but instead looks up at the roof and screams again. It was like every time he saw me, he wanted to say it. He lasted maybe 10 minutes before he couldn't take it anymore. He storms off and sends someone over to help. But all the urgent work was buried deep. We had to complete non-urgent work first to get it out of the way so that we could find it. And guess who suddenly left work on time every day and stopped working weekends? In short, with people helping me, it took over 2 weeks to catch up and clear the backlog. Those urgent parts were at least 2 weeks late. It took a lot longer for the schedule to return to normal. Let you handle it? Okay, I'll just be over here. Background. I am the video conference / audio visual specialist for a state agency. This means that I assist with any meetings that use MS Teams, WebEx, Zoom, and anything in between, along with troubleshooting any issues with video conference equipment, TVs, restaurant racks, etc. However, if any equipment needs repair or replacement, we have a contract with a third party to come out and investigate. I am also a mid-30s man, though I could probably pass for 20s, hence the kid remark later. And while I'm not going to win any strongman competitions, I'm 5'11", pretty stocky, and work out regularly. Incident. This happened last week. There's a TV mounted in the director's conference room that has been acting up for the past few weeks. Every time I think I fixed it, it'll bug out again. Either the TV won't power on, or it will power on, but only show a black screen. TV won't respond to any inputs, etc. It may work for a day without issue, and then the next, everything I try won't get it working. Basically, the TV is foobar. I call up the contractor and explain the situation, and he then proceeds to talk down to me like I don't know how to do my job, which already rubbed me the wrong way. Contractor.
Have you tried this?
Me. Yes. Contractor.
This?
Me. Yes.
This?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good news. TV should still be under warranty with us anyway, so we can probably come out and replace the TV.
Me. Okay, great. Well, give me a time so I can be available to help y'all out.
We can handle it. We'll be out sometime tomorrow.
Okay, great. Click. Now, what I had neglected to tell them was that this TV is an 84-inch Panasonic LCD display. It is a beast and very heavy, 238 pounds. Next day comes and in walks a 5'5" man in at least his early 60s with very little muscle on him and a tall lanky dude that I'm not saying was an addict, but I am saying he was missing a lot of teeth, face was pretty scarred, and didn't look particularly fit. No way these guys are getting this TV off its mount. Shorty does the talking here. Shorty.
You call about the TV?
Me. Yeah. Look, this TV is pretty heavy, so you just let me know where you need me to help you get it down.
No need. We got this.
Me. Trust me, guys. This TV is a monster. Shorty then claps me on the shoulder.
Look, kid. I've been doing this a lot longer than you, okay? Just leave it to the professionals.
Cue malicious compliance. Me. Okay, right this way. I lead them to the director's conference room, and they are all smiles until they see this TV, and their faces drop. They just sort of stand there in the doorway in a brief stunned silence. Me. Well, I'll be at my desk if you need anything. I walk off, and the way my desk is positioned, if I lean just enough, I can see into the conference room. I watch for a while as these two pace around the TV a bit, scratching their heads trying to figure out how to get this TV down. Finally, I see them try and give it the old heave-ho with Shorty standing on his tiptoes trying to lift this TV off its mount. His face turns beet red and his arms are shaking pretty hard. They give a few more tries until finally deciding they can't get it. I see Shorty heading my way as I lean forward back to my desk. Shorty.
Hey man, would you mind giving us a hand?
Me. Actually, some important emails just came in. I point to a screen he can't see that has Reddit pulled up. Shorty.
It'll only take a minute.
Me. I don't know. I'd really like to leave it to the professionals. Shorty.
Please?
Me. You know what? Sure. These emails can wait. I close Reddit. We walk back to the conference room. I take one side, they both take the other, and all three of us heave this TV off and onto a dolly. They take it off and bring in a much lighter flat screen as a temporary replacement. They set it up and pack up to leave. Me. Thanks, guys. I clap Shorty on the shoulder. And hey, I'm here if you need anything next time. Shorty.
Yeah, thanks.
Grumble, grumble, out the door. New TV works great, by the way. Flip-flop Karen. Yesterday, Sunday, I went to visit my son, daughter-in-law, and grandson to deliver some food my wife made. Lasagna, baby. When my wife makes lasagna, everybody gets some. Daughter-in-law is in bed as she had hurt her back on Friday and it was still giving her issues. Been there, done that. It sucks. I'm playing with my grandson and my son mentions he's gonna take him to the grocery store to pick up a few things so daughter-in-law doesn't have to worry about going. Grandson is cutting molars and not in a very good mood. I offer to go with him to the store to expedite the process as it's on my way home. We take separate cars and meet up, start shopping, and are knocking it out, me grabbing things and my son entertaining little Mr. Cranky Pants. We stopped in the pet food and supplies aisle as he needed kitty litter. I grab it and leave, heading over to the dairy aisle. One more thing to get and we are out of there. This pet food aisle is set up as dog foods and supplies on one side, a cooler with fresh pet food, bird food, hamster food, etc., then cat food and supplies on the opposite end. While leaving the aisle, I did hear someone yelling, "Hey!" but paid it no mind. While walking to the dairy aisle, I heard a faint slap, 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 slap. That is the unmistakable sound of flip-flops. We live in Florida, and flip-flops are a way of life. Heck, when it gets cold, there are some who wear them with socks. Walking in the dairy aisle, still hearing the slap, 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 slap. Grab the butter, and as we are turning the corner to head to the registers, slap, 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 slap.
Hey, stop running from me. I've been chasing you for 10 minutes. I need help. Where is?
Insert some random dog food. She was visibly out of breath. We both turn around, and right away she starts in about chasing us down, blah blah blah. But you could tell she was confused, as we are not dressed anywhere close to what employees wear, as they wear green uniforms. She kept staring at our shirts, me with a Steppenwolf t-shirt, complete with a large wolf head, and my son with a Donkey Kong t-shirt. Not ready to admit defeat yet, she tried to say something else, and at this moment, my grandson sticks his arms straight out and starts waving his hands around, saying, "No!" Yup, we both lost it and started laughing so hard we were in tears. Just said, "Don't work here," turned around and continued to the registers without incident. She stood there, mouth gaping. She ran down to the other end of the pet aisle, past 3 other aisles, then ran down the entire length of the dairy aisle in her flip-flops to chase down 2 men and a baby to ask about some random dog food. Slap, 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 slap. No, I can't leave the gas station I'm working at during the middle of my shift to order McDonald's for you. This was quite a while ago, over a year at least. I don't remember exactly how long, but I still think about it from time to time, wondering what planet this lady must have come from to think a request such as hers was even remotely reasonable. I work at a gas station in a small town. Although the town is very small, a major highway cuts through it, and the gas station where I work is often fairly busy. We're actually busy enough to justify having 2 workers, but the owners disagree and figure the gas station itself is small enough that 1 worker should be able to handle things fine on their own. Yes, I have some stories that prove the owners have clearly never had to work under the conditions they expect us to, but those are for another day. My point is that the cashier on duty for that shift is the only person working there at that time, unless they're training someone, and trainees are given exactly 2 days of training before getting thrown in the deep end because, God forbid, the owners have to pay 2 people to work at the same time. Never mind it gets busy enough to have lines snake around the whole building quite often. I should also mention our number is similar to a few other places, including some that are actually in the next town over. So when we answer the phone, we answer with, "Hello, you've reached name of town, name of gas station." The idea being, upon hearing this, any misdials will realize immediately they have the wrong number and prevent conversations like the following. Obviously, it didn't work in this case. It's a typical day at work, and I had just finished helping a customer. It was a rare, blissfully slow day, so far. So there was only 1 other customer in the store at the time who was busy browsing the drink section we had when the store phone rang. Normally, our policy is customers in store get priority over phone calls, but as the only customer in the store wasn't actually ready to check out yet, I went ahead and answered it. This is the conversation that ensued. Me: "Hello, you've reached our gas station. How may I help you?" Karen:
Yeah, I want to call ahead my order so y'all have it ready when I get there. I want a McDouble and a large fry with...
Me cuts the lady off. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but this is the gas station, not McDonald's."
This isn't McDonald's?
"No, ma'am, it's the gas station." Karen:
Are you sure?
Me glances at the gas pumps outside, thinking, "What the heck?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm sure."
Well, I called because I want my order ready when I get there.
Me: well, then you'll need to call McDonald's." Karen:
Can't you just run over there and hand your phone to them? Or just order for me and I can talk you through it?
At this point, I should mention the store phone is obviously a landline phone. I mean, yeah, it's cordless, but it has a limited range on how far you can take it from the base before it stops working. So not only is this request ridiculous, but it's also literally impossible. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't do that. Karen.
What do you mean you can't do that? Why not? This is terrible customer service.
Unintelligible yelling and ranting. So yeah, she literally started yelling at me because of her mistake and the fact she was apparently too lazy, entitled, to hang up and dial the correct number, instead expecting me to leave my actual job in the middle of my shift, leaving the store unsupervised to help her pre-order her McDonald's so she wouldn't have to wait. Who, from her attitude with me, I can only guess she would have immediately complained that it was cold. By now, the in-store customer is ready at the counter, and as the person on the phone is actually not even wanting us, it was time to cut this off, and while admittedly probably wasn't the right way to handle things, I needed her off the phone so I could help my actual customer. I completely dropped my polite retail persona and decided to be absolutely blunt. Look, lady, I cannot leave my workplace while I'm working. I have my own customers to help. The phone we're speaking on is a landline, as are most businesses' phones, and even if I wanted to help you, it doesn't have the range to go that far. As for customer service, you are not my customer. You are McDonald's customer, and it's actually not my job to help you order your McDonald's. Have a great day. The last part said in an overly sweet, sarcastic tone that I generally reserve for Karens. I hung up without even giving her a chance to respond, then helped my actual customer. She never called back, and I never got in any trouble. So she either didn't complain or complained to the wrong place, and I honestly have no idea if she ever did get her McDonald's. Speaking of McDonald's, what's your favorite thing from McDonald's? Please let us know.
Travis Scott me for the win, bruh. Straight up.
My aunt refused to pay me after I babysat for her, so I posted our text conversation on Facebook. I, 17 male, watched my step-cousins, who are 7 and 9, last night for 5 hours, while my aunt, Melissa, who's 39, went out with her girlfriends. She offered to pay me $12 an hour, and I agreed because why not? Dinner's free, and me and her boys get along well. When my aunt arrived at 11 p.m., she got angry because the 9-year-old is still playing PlayStation with me, and the 7-year-old is watching a video on my phone. She said they're supposed to be in bed already, and she's very disappointed in me. I apologized and told her the boys begged me to stay up, and she didn't tell me what their bedtime was. After she sent the boys to bed, she told me she won't be paying as I ate dinner and snacks and also played GTA. I didn't argue with her, so I went home empty-handed. This morning, I texted her and asked if she still isn't paying me, and she responded with a no and a litany of reasons. I told her we agreed to $12 an hour, and it's unfair that she's stiffing me of my money. She said we are family, and I was practically just hanging out with her stepkids, so I don't deserve any payment. I got so upset, I took a screenshot of our text conversation and shared it to our family group chat. All my cousins, aunts, and uncles, Nana and Papa will be able to see it. Some of them did, including my mom, who called Melissa out for what she did to me. My aunt also called me and called me a jerk for being petty and shaming her in our group chat. So, am I the jerk? Did I go too far? Melissa's husband, who was away at the time, offered to pay me $100 and to post an apology to my aunt. I want to take the money, but I think apologizing to her is unfair. Who do you agree with, OP or his aunt? Please let us know.
If you wouldn't want your friends and family to know how you're treating someone, you probably shouldn't be treating them that way.
I was fired for exposing my boss, so I used his obsession with golf and watches to get him fired. This was in the last throes of the analog mid-90s. Fax machines, FedEx, dial-up computing, and voicemail were the most common business tools. I was a young regional sales manager for a major branded consumer product. I covered the grocery class of trade in 11 western states. My division worked out of Chicago, and I had a home office on the West Coast. I had made my reputation by typically making my quota and keeping costs within budget. I would get reassigned to struggling markets, and more often than not, I would usually make my sales number. Nothing too fancy. I just figured where the best opportunities were and concentrated on them. In those days, we had something called Market Development Funds, MDF, or as we called it, Making Days Fun, in the time before such things were deemed illegal. It was money we could literally use for almost anything you could imagine. Wining and dining, sending buyers to the Super Bowl, taking them on market research trips. I once took 6 honchos for a weekend of fishing in Mexico. As long as you had the receipts and your boss knew, except in cases where they specifically asked not to know. We were free to spend money as we saw fit. This was old school Mad Men style slush funds, all tax deductible. Typically, the MDF money was 2% of your total annual gross sales and was use it or lose it, meaning it had to be spent because it wouldn't roll over. I always had some left over. As a team player, I would let my boss, Sasquatch, know so he could use it. No big deal. Towards the end of the year, my weekly FedEx pack from the company started including sign-offs to payments for a supplier I had never even heard of before. What was weird is that they were a demo company that wasn't one of my regional suppliers. If you've ever been offered a sample or a coupon in a grocery store, that was a demo company. I called the broker/agent in that market and learned that they had never used the company or even heard of them. I finally figured out that they were from Sasquatch and that he had thrown them in with my other sign-offs. I called him and asked if he knew what they were. He said that they should be assigned to my MDF and not to worry about them. This was a little unusual because demos would normally be taken out of other monies or come down from marketing. Whatever, I signed off on them. Hung out to dry. About 3 months later, I was called into HQ for a meeting where I was told I was being transferred to a market that I had never worked before and would be required to relocate. At the time, my wife was pregnant, and we just started an extensive remodel on our newly purchased house. The company had some relocation benefits, but it was just too hectic to pull up roots and move to the southeast. I declined the offer and was told that I could look for another job within the company or receive a severance package. I wound up taking the severance. The truth comes to light. Several months later, one of my ex-coworkers told me that my region had been taken over by one of Sasquatch's past work associates who he managed to get hired in my spot, and that the region was tanking badly. Nothing made sense. Why was I terminated and then replaced by someone who lived in another city and who couldn't do the job? I started to think in my naivete that I may have put a target on my back. After some research and digging, which was much harder before the internet, I learned that the demo company billing the MDF was based in my ex-boss's previous city and was just a PO box, a telephone, and a DBA registered by the new person in my job. Later, I found out it was his girlfriend/mistress. I was livid. Like most people, I tend to plan revenge in my head, but never really go through with it. Most of the time, it's a coping mechanism and not very useful in moving on past being wronged. But this was so egregious, so uncalled for, and so disruptive to my life that I felt I had to get even. My plan evolved to take this guy down. Whatever the time it took, whatever the cost in lives or money, I was going to get this guy. I may have been able to rat him out to the company, but they might have dismissed my complaint as coming from a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. The hook. I decided that I was going to approach Guy as a phony recruiter, not just a guy collecting resumes, but as a retained corporate headhunter, someone paid to onboard people for big jobs. I had spent a year early in my career working for a super exclusive headhunting firm and knew exactly what transpired in the process. My subterfuge required international telexes, phony letterhead, faked English accents, and overseas friends to do my bidding. Sasquatch was obsessed with expensive watches and golf. He played regularly and watched pro golf both on TV and live. He would incessantly chatter about both topics. To bait him, I arranged for him to be approached by an executive position with a major Swiss watch company for a position tied to pro golf and other swanky sports, sponsorships, and included a shopping list of benefits and perquisites. The job would require working with major sports organizers, flying around the world, first class, and basically spending money. It was a job he could only dream of. The setup. In the slow and methodical long con, I strung him along until the time was right to close with an offer. The only catch was that he had to report to Switzerland for final offer and onboarding. I deliberately scheduled it for the week of the old jobs division meetings and reporting. They were mandatory and impossible to miss without raising red flags. Sasquatch was worried that his absence would be impossible to cover, especially if he was out of the country. The headhunting firm said they could move the appointment up a few days so that he would be able to attend his meeting, but that he would need to purchase an unrestricted business class seat and make his own hotel reservations. Save your receipts. and the watch company will reimburse you, he was told. Sasquatch showed up to his swanky hotel suite using his own credit card for their expensive room and promptly received a note from the watch company that his appointment had to be rescheduled for the following Monday because of a major corporate crisis. Sasquatch called the phony recruiter in a panic about missing the corporate meetings back in the States. It was agreed that he would call in sick and that whatever happened with the old job, he was heading to much greener fairways. Enjoy your weekend in Europe. By Monday, you'll be in your dream job. The Sting. While Sasquatch was cooling his jets in Europe, I nonchalantly called his boss, the president of the division, and casually asked for a reference on Sasquatch's work ethic and the dates of employment. You'd be surprised how often this mistake happens. The president, to his credit, didn't tip his hand or act very surprised by the call, but like a good corporate wonk, he referred me to human resources. I let it slip that he was in Europe finalizing his new job and that he had already given the company notice. My bad. The aftermath and how the revenge overstepped its original mission. Eventually, I was able to put together the aftermath from my old coworkers and other people in the trade who did not know I was the revenge ninja. When Monday came and went, Sasquatch must have been apoplectic. This is to be assumed since we had cut all communications to let him twist in the wind because we received at least 20 calls to the exchange and multiple faxes. Sasquatch hung around the hotel for a day or two and then finally decided to leave for home. I assume at some point he may have contacted the watch company, but I never confirmed it. When he finally got home, he found his office had been packed up and left with his wife. An HR person met him off-site to give him his severance and retrieve the car and other company property. I heard his wife left him sometime later and his mistress was fired for theft. I figure he spent at least $10,000 on travel and hotel. Epilogue. I wish I could say I tipped my hand and told Sasquatch that I was the author of his demise, but it really served no purpose and in theory may have exposed me to some retribution of my own. By my moral lodestar, I got even with a thief who was content to steal and take my livelihood. That was plenty. Show 'em how smart the accounting staff is at trivia games? Okay, boss. At the turn of the century, I worked as an accountant for a major sports team. The owner hired a new VP of Human Resources who immediately fired the Chief Financial Officer. The CFO's duties were shifted down to the accounting staff, and we were a small staff of 6. We were swamped. At the same time, the new VP of HR organized an all-staff trivia contest between departments. When those of us in accounting saw the email, we immediately deleted it. We were already working evenings and weekends just to keep up. We had no spare time to spend an afternoon playing games. When the VP of HR saw that no one from accounting had signed up, he called another accountant and me into his office. He insisted we form a team and participate in the event. We explained how incredibly busy we were, pointed out the deadlines we were facing, and told him how many hours everyone in the department was working. His face turned red. He stood and pointed a finger at me and said, "This is not a request. This is mandatory. You will attend the trivia contest, and you will show the entire staff how smart the accounting staff is." He glared at both of us in turn. "Do you understand?" We nodded and left his office. Halfway back to the accounting office, my coworker gestured to the restroom, and we ducked inside. "If we've got to do this," she said with an evil grin, "let's really do this." I nodded, catching her meaning. She was a highly educated, brilliant person who was well-versed in politics and current issues. I'll call her Ivy League. My talent is a bizarre memory for odd and normally unuseful factoids. The trivia teams had to be 3-player, and we decided to recruit another coworker who knew sports statistics to the point of being overzealous. Let's call him Sportster, and he was the perfect fit because we knew they'd have a lot of sports trivia in the game. We pulled him aside and went over our plan with him. We would show him how smart the accounting staff was, and we would do it as fast as possible so we could get back to the piles of work waiting for us. He was all in. On the day of the trivia game, all staff met in a bar in the empty arena. Ironically, the VP of HR was called away on an HR emergency, so he didn't show up at all. There was an open bar, appetizers, and a few of the sports team's players and broadcasters attended. The other trivia teams represented ticketing, guest services, operations, security, marketing, broadcasting, IT, the foundation, etc. I would estimate nearly 200 people were there. They were all drinking and filling up on the bar food. The three of us from accounting drank caffeinated soda and stayed sharp, and we dominated. The game was structured so two teams would play each other while the rest of the staff watched. When a team lost during a round, they were immediately out of the competition. It started as a fun event with laughter and teasing between departments. During the first round, our team easily and fiercely trounced the competition. The three of us stayed deadly serious and focused throughout the game. Ivy League was superb at answering the classical knowledge and politics questions. Sportster covered the world of athletics, and I was able to pull up anything they couldn't. As our team quickly routed our opponents and moved up into tiers, the laughter died away and the fun atmosphere disappeared from the bar. We won the competition. We were awarded a small plastic trophy and we left immediately, going back to the piles of work awaiting us at our cubicles. That evening, I worked quite late, quietly plugging away. Our middle manager accountant was in his office working and probably didn't realize I was still there. Someone stormed into the area and went right to the middle manager's office. "What the heck happened at the trivia thing?" It was the VP of HR. The middle manager talked about how Ivy League, MN Golden Girl, and Sportster were so intent on winning, it made everyone uncomfortable. I realized I had to make my presence known, so I grabbed my trophy and stood, prairie dogging over the cubicles. "Hey, you forgot to tell them," I said. "They tried to distract us by bringing in the players and the on-air talent." I laughed and set my trophy on the corner of the cubicle. "But we showed them how smart the accounting staff is." I didn't wait to see their reaction. I just sat and got back to work. In the 10 years I worked for that organization, there were no more all-staff trivia games played. How dare I have better grades than my sister? This happened, I think, when I was 12. I always did fairly well in school, but my sister, not so much. I knew she could do better, but she really didn't try all that hard. Then she'd be unhappy when she'd get low grades on a test. She didn't fail much, but got a lot of D's. One of the few things my parents and I ever actually agreed on together was trying to give my sister pep talks to try harder in school. My mom had a very "my princess can do no wrong" personality, but she still seemed to want my sister to succeed in school. So she forced me to help sister with her homework when I wasn't busy. I didn't mind helping with the homework, but sister didn't make helping her easy. She'd get mad if I didn't just do the homework for her. And yes, my mother did outright try a few times to make me do my sister's homework for her, but my dad shut that down fast. So my sister would get bored easily and go play video games when I didn't just give her the answers. So I stopped trying to help since she wouldn't listen. Not long after this, my sister failed several assignments in a row, and my parents forced her to do her homework before gaming, which really made her upset, but she complied. Not long after this, I got my annual report card and all my grades were pretty decent. When I presented the report card to my mother, my sister suddenly got upset and left the room. I asked Mom what that was about, and she scolded me saying, "How dare you rub your success in your sister's face?" I was a bit flabbergasted because this had never been an issue before and said I wasn't doing that at all. My mother then waved her finger in front of my eyes and said it was my fault sister was so unhappy because she's trying to do better in school, and I was bringing her down by being too happy about my report card around her. I grew some backbone and said that all I did was do good in school. I wasn't flaunting anything. Plus, how is it a crime to be too happy? Well, I guess that was the wrong answer to her because she immediately sent me to my room and said I wasn't getting any dinner. Dad was late getting home that night, so I went hungry till he got back. When I told him what had happened, he called my mother out. She started lying through her teeth and said I was bragging about my grades and flaunting them at my sister by waving the report card in her face, and my sister backed up my mom on this lie. My parents ended up fighting because my dad didn't believe what my mother was saying. Like my sister, she was a terrible liar in her own way. Whenever she lied, she'd always get overdramatic about every little detail, and often couldn't keep the story straight without holes being poked in it. So Dad knew I was the one telling the truth. Mom was upset that Dad didn't believe her, and then he scolded her like a kid for sending me to my room without dinner over something that wasn't even my fault. He then told her to apologize to me. She rolled her eyes and gave me a really fake-sounding, "I'm sorry," and then stormed outside to cool off on the patio. My dad then made me a late dinner to make up for what my mom did. He also grounded my sister from video games for a few days for lying to him, and that made her scream and follow mom outside. I got to have a good dinner of grilled cheese sandwiches and Campbell's tomato soup that night, something I still enjoy making and eating to this day. About a year or so after this, my sister copied a book report I did in elementary school, and my mother let her get away with it. But that's another story for another post. The provided lunch is for those who work through lunch only. You got it. The company I work for, and specifically the team I used to belong to, was one team of a department of like 60 operations people, and twice a month we had peak days, which were just high volume and crazy. To help on these days, one day the management team decides to start buying the department lunch on these days so we can work through our lunch and not have to worry about food. Now, please keep in the back of your mind that this is enough food for the 60 staffers and the 20 or so managers and supervisors. Now, this goes on for about 3 months, and we work through our lunch and always finish the work and put in our overtime. No issues. But now it's my manager's turn to set up the food order. But she can't just do that. No, she needs to project her skills, so she makes an announcement to the whole department.
It's been brought to my attention that some of you have been taking food and not skipping your lunches. The provided food is for those who work through lunch only.
Now, if she had ended it there, that would have been one thing, but she didn't. She adds,
And for the record, overtime will not be approved if you take the food. We are providing you lunch in exchange for your time.
Barring how illegal this is, we are all upset and start checking our pay stubs. And sure enough, we were not paid for overtime on the last few peak days. Lunch shows up about an hour late, and not a single person outside of the managers got up and took the food. Not only that, none of us put any overtime that day. At the end of the day, the management team tossed all the food. 3 weeks later, on the next peak day, the same thing happens again, and then again on the peak day after that. The next time, the MD, managing director, comes on the floor in the morning and announces that there will be a change in our policy.
Team, we are tired of ordering food and throwing it away. We are also not keeping up with the volume of work on peak days. Food is anyone who wants to work through their lunch, and of course, you will be paid for your overtime. In fact, we will be retroactively paying for your unapproved overtime on your next paycheck. But we need to get the work done, so let's come together on this.
Turns out, one of the older ladies who had been with the company for like 40 years put in a call about what was said and happening to HR. And a lawyer. She wanted her overtime paid. It got so ugly that HR ended up pulling badge swipes to see what time everyone left for a 90-day period and paid us for any missed overtime to the minute past our scheduled time. For some people, it ended up being several $100s. Am I the jerk for not wanting to give my brother my inheritance? I want to start by saying this. I am not my parents' favorite kid. As much as this might sound absurd or even biased, which might be, there's no other way to describe my family. I'm the youngest sibling, third kid, and I have a sister, oldest, and a brother. My sister and brother are just a bit older than me, at 23 and 21, while I just turned 18 last August. Throughout my life, I've always known my parents didn't particularly like me. They would treat my siblings a lot better, give them better clothes and gifts, and even gave them allowances. I was never treated badly, but I was never given anything like that. To be honest, I don't even remember the last time my parents gave me a gift for my birthday or even congratulated me for that matter. This was the reason I started working as a part-timer since I turned 13, washing cars, cutting grass, washing driveways, etc. That's how I managed to have some money should I need or buy things I want. For example, while my parents gave my siblings laptops once they got to high school, I needed to buy my own. Which is fine, they don't need to give me anything, I'm not entitled to it, it just made me very self-conscious about myself. Now to the main part. My grandfather was a very kind man, and when he passed, he left in his will, I'm not really sure about how this works, as I know almost nothing about the law, inheritances for his grandchildren, my siblings and myself, to finance our studies, college, housing, etc. As I understand, this money would only be possible to be used after the person is 18. Now, my sister went to college and is almost graduating. My brother, however, has changed his course 4 times in the last 2 years, And every time he did that, there was a large cost associated with it, especially since he aimed for expensive colleges. Now, he has spent a large part of his inheritance and probably won't be able to finance any course to the end. This is my main problem. My parents came to me and asked me to give my brother my part of the inheritance, as he has had that problem. Thing is, I'll be taking the college entrance exams in November/December, and by giving him this inheritance, I won't be able to do that, as I won't be able to afford college at all. I told them it was absurd, and it wasn't my fault that he wasted his part of the inheritance. Their answer was,
He's your brother and he needs help.
he'll help you pay for your studies once he graduates. That means I would need to postpone college for at least 4 or 5 years. I obviously don't want to do that, and told my parents that it was my decision. As you would assume, they didn't take that lightly. They've taken to call me an ungrateful kid and a jerk for not thinking about family. I'm constantly being shunned in my house, to the point that it's making me feel like a horrible person. Reddit, please, am I such a monster? Am I the jerk for refusing to give up the master bedroom and en-suite for my parents? I have 6 brothers. I'm the only girl. When my parents split, I was 10. My mother moved out in with her now husband, who himself has kids, so we only got every other weekend with him. My father decided, as I was the only girl in the family at that time, that I would be given the master bedroom and en-suite, which used to be his and my mother's room. He then moved into my room, which is the smallest bedroom in the home. I'm 20 now. I've got around 3 years left of college, and then I would like to move out for university. 3 of my brothers still live at home, who are 13, 16, and 18. My father's partner recently moved in with her 2 kids, who are 4 and 8, and to say the house is packed would be an understatement, especially since they openly want another kid. Don't ask me why. Well, my father's partner is complaining about having the smallest room. They could ask one of the younger ones to move into it, but they say since I'm an adult, I should move into the smaller room and plan to move out. I pay for the room and have a whole study section set up because this course is extremely fast-paced and a lot of work, especially since I go to work after, so I'm out from 6 in the morning till 11 that night for college and work. I've said no, I pay, so I'm allowed this room, but my father says he only gave it to me because I was the only girl, and now I'm not the only girl. His partner doesn't want to share the bathroom with 5 kids, etc. They're both pretty upset with me, and my friends say they have a point, that I am not entitled to the room and should be paying rent no matter the room. Am I the jerk? Am I the jerk for wanting my female friend at our wedding? I, 40 male, recently proposed to my girlfriend. Let's call her Hannah, 28 female, and our wedding is next July. As we are organizing the bridal party, the issue came up that Hannah doesn't have any close girlfriends. Her best friends are all guys, and while I've accepted it and I'm not jealous, I was at first, I admit, but I got over it. She said she just wants a best man, not a maid of honor, and no bridesmaids, which is very weird in my opinion. My family is traditional. I know they won't like it if she has no bridesmaids there and a guy instead. My dad already thinks Hannah's relationship with her male best friend is inappropriate, and she shouldn't be that close with another guy when she's in a long-term relationship. To be honest, I don't like her best friend either. I feel like he doesn't like me and wants to turn Hannah against me, but I hold my tongue because I know she'd get mad if I told her. I said she should choose some girls as bridesmaids instead, but Hannah refused, saying she's not close enough to any girls. I suggested she could ask her 2 sisters, which upset her because she has been no contact with her family for about 10 years. I pointed out this could be a good chance for her and her sisters to reconnect. Honestly, I think no matter what issues, you have family that should be at your wedding. She kept stubbornly refusing. Hannah kept saying that she didn't care about having bridesmaids or a maid of honor. She just wants her best friend there. She said he is like her family, and he was there for her when she went no contact with her real family. She really wants him at her wedding. I kept trying to explain why it made me uncomfortable, but she just wouldn't listen. She said it was unfair and claims there's no way Jack is romantically interested in her. He says that he's gay. In the end, I said fine. She could have a guy in her side of the party, but only if I could have a girl in my side. Well, Hannah said that was fine and that she didn't mind, but that quickly changed when I said who I wanted to invite. My ex-girlfriend. Let's call her Sasha, who's 34. Hannah said that it was one thing to want a friend at the wedding and another to invite an ex. But Sasha and I were together for 7 years, and now we are still on good terms, so I would say she's a friend, and since we were together for so long, I think she is just as much family to me as Hannah's friend is to her. I said that it was hypocritical for Hannah to get jealous of me wanting a female friend there when she wants her male friend to be there. She said that it's different, but I think it's the same thing, if not worse on her end. Sasha doesn't have an issue with Hannah, but I think her friend doesn't seem to like me, even if he's never said outright. She brought up how my parents, mainly my dad, keep saying they want me to get back with Sasha, which isn't even my fault. I said either Jack goes and she asks her sisters to be bridesmaids, or I get to have Sasha in the wedding party. Hannah isn't talking to me now. Am I the jerk? Am I the jerk for asking my roommate to stop having her sister over so often? I, 19 female, rent a 4-bedroom house with 3 other girls. Alex, who's 26 female, Taylor, 23 female, and Lauren, 18 female. Alex has a little sister, Anna, who's 9. Anna's mom drops her off to stay with Alex at least 2 nights a week. Alex's room is in the basement, and she basically has a separate apartment, so we don't see her or Anna much when she visits. I will admit that Alex pays more rent for the basement apartment and pays extra utilities because the kid is here so often, and she doesn't have us babysit except for Lauren. But Lauren loves kids and gets paid. The problem is, I didn't sign up to live with a kid. If I would have known there was a kid here all the time, I wouldn't have chosen to live here. I talked to Alex yesterday, and I asked her to not have her sister over so often because none of us signed up to live with a 9-year-old. She said Anna is very well behaved and that she keeps Anna in her space so we don't have to be around her. I told her I know she keeps Anna away from us, but I still don't want to live with a kid. She asked me to drop this and said that Anna's dad, they have different dads, is out of the picture and their mom is neglectful. I said I feel bad for her, but that's still not my problem. She and Lauren are mad at me, and Taylor said I'm the only one that has a problem with the kid being here. Am I the jerk for asking my roommate to not have her sister over so often? You'll have my job? Okay, Karen, this will be interesting. So I'm out shopping for a few things. Bread, milk, bin bags, etc. I remember that I need some ham, so I go to the cooked meats aisle and look for something tempting. As I'm searching for something nice, I hear a voice behind me saying, "Excuse me," in a not at all polite manner. I look over my shoulder and see the local Karen. I acknowledge her and take 2 steps to the side, but don't turn around. I feel a tap on my shoulder and the same non-too-polite voice saying, "Excuse me, I'm talking to you. Don't ignore me." I turn around and open my mouth to ask what she wants and why she's being rude. But before I can speak, she starts going off on me for being a lazy member of staff and ignoring her. I say, "If you think I work here, you're wrong. I don't." And she says, "You're just being lazy. I'll have your job." "Really?" I say, badly feigning surprise. "You'll have my job?" "Yes, I will," she says, with a strange mixture of superiority, righteousness, and stupidity. "Okay, suit yourself. You can have it." I waved my hands around in strange shapes and announced, "You are now officially a member of staff." It is said that a pitcher can speak 1,000 words, but the look on her face at this point just said, "What the heck?" "But I want you to get these things for me. I want," she starts. "Don't ask me. I'm a customer. You should ask a colleague since you work here. In fact, you can help me with what I need." "What? But I don't work here," she says. "Yes, you do. You said you'd have my job and I gave it to you. Now buzz off and leave me alone." She stomps off, but that wasn't the end of it. Another customer, who's clearly seen the interaction, stopped her halfway up the aisle and said, loudly enough for me to hear, "Oh, finally someone who works here. Can you get that heavy thing off the top shelf?" "Oh, buzz off," she said, and walked, presumably, out of the shop. Other customer, "You absolute legend." Entitled sister thinks she deserves my house because she has 3 kids. So my grandfather was a pretty wealthy man, and because of it, he and my mother had a rocky relationship and haven't spoken in over 5 years. My 2 sisters turned out just like my mother, a high sense of entitlement. Believe the world owes them everything, and my grandfather's money didn't help this. They expected my grandfather to pay for a lavish lifestyle. Eventually, he ended up cutting them off, which caused them to stop speaking to him. They even tried pressuring me to do the same. I refused. me and my grandfather were really close. I spent a lot of time at the house. It was one of my favorite places in the world, and I am absolutely thrilled he left it to me. My grandfather was my best friend. He was the first person I came out to when I was 15, and his reaction is still my favorite. But he sadly passed away a few months ago. This wasn't a surprise by any means, as he had been battling cancer for years. Well, my grandfather ended up leaving everything to me and two of my cousins he was also close with. I got the family home, which is a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom house with a pool and a hot tub. I was also left a good chunk of money, which will really help with student loans. One cousin got my grandfather's antique car collection. Not sure if it can really be called a collection, as there are only 3, but my grandfather called it that, so that's what I'm going with. The other cousin got my grandfather's painting collection, which was pretty big and has a few pretty expensive paintings in it. But seeing as she is an artist herself, I doubt she will sell them. I think she actually wants to donate a few of the more well-known ones to our local museum. My mother and sisters got nothing. Well, as you can likely guess, they freaked out. There wasn't much they could do about my cousin, as they didn't really speak to my family for other reasons. But with me, they flipped out. My mom was mad because this was her family home, and she thinks she deserves it. My sister thinks I should give it to her because she's married and has 3 kids, and she needs it more. She already has a nice house, by the way. This one is just more expensive. I do not want to give the house to her. My grandfather wanted me to have it. That's gotta mean something, right? And just because I do not have a family right now doesn't mean I won't in the future. Me and my boyfriend have even talked about it multiple times. Like I said, this place means a lot to me, and I want to keep it. My other sister has no interest in the house. She just wants some of the money I got. She recently got out of prison and is pretty much broke. I wouldn't have had a problem giving her some of the money if it weren't for the fact that before going to prison, she stole a lot of money from me and many other family members, including my grandfather.
I'd think about getting some sort of a restraining order against them. Never underestimate the power of a Karen.
Am I the jerk for not letting my niece use her iPad during our wedding? My wife and I got married September 4th, and this drama is still going on. We paid a lot of money for a videographer to capture our ceremony. We told everyone at the rehearsal dinner we would be having everyone turn their devices off for the ceremony just so that there wouldn't be any distractions. My brother pulled me aside later on to tell me that his daughter, who's 4, would need to have her iPad to get through the ceremony. Otherwise, she would be really noisy and wouldn't sit still and might ruin the day for us. I told him no, she wouldn't be using it because there's a chance she may turn the volume on or something, and I really don't want to take that risk. I thought that was the end of it, but the next day, my brother, who is also my best man, came to me and said that his daughter was having a hard time today and that she would need her iPad. I again told him no. He said that if she didn't have it, she would make a fuss, and the missus wouldn't want that ruining her big day, now would she? And that kind of upset me, because yeah, it's her day, but it's also mine. I'm marrying the woman I love, and we both made this no devices decision together. I told him if he couldn't respect it, then his daughter could wait outside with either him or his wife, but her iPad wouldn't be in there. He was annoyed, but we left it at that. And then it happens. Middle of the ceremony, we hear, "We finally found the perfect house." And then some fumbling as my sister-in-law is trying to get the iPad to shut off, and my niece starts to whine. Some ad started playing as my niece was playing a game. My wife and I were annoyed, but we, along with everyone else, laughed it off and continued on. During the reception, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law ran up to us, saying they didn't know the volume was up so loud, and they had my niece apologize for it. My wife said it's done and over with, and it was rude of you to do. My bro said it wasn't fair, so I said that it wasn't fair sister-in-law allowed it, seeing as we already talked about it, and that going against what we had already asked of them and the iPad was a major jerk move, and that them not apologizing but having their daughter make a big show of doing so was sending the wrong message, seeing as she's 4 and she doesn't even understand, and that it was them who allowed it to happen. My brother said that it wasn't that deep and that I'm being ridiculous. Then the rest of the reception was kind of awkward, even during the best man speech. He tried to make a joke. "Yeah, that was my daughter's iPad making the noise. She likes to be a rule breaker." And it just made my wife and I angry. I've said very few things to him since this happened. My parents are starting to think I'm the jerk For not just moving on and for waiting for him to apologize? Am I the jerk? Edit. I keep seeing this come up about how if we didn't want this to happen, then we should have had a child-free wedding. We essentially did in the fact that we told everyone, hey, people will be drinking, so if you want to leave your kids at home, that's fine with us. And most people did. My niece came and 4 other kids, one being only 7 months old, and then a 5, a 7, and a 12-year-old. It also helps that naturally, both sides of the family are late-night partiers, so to leave the kids home wasn't a huge offense. And for those asking what we would have done had she instead started fussing and crying, that's fine with us. We would have rather had that instead of a 30-second YouTube ad going on, then an awkward scramble to get it turned off, which threw off the flow of our vows. If she started fussing, that's something we could have laughed about, and her mom would have taken her outside. Instead, we had all the guests turning to look at them in a very awkward display of, you were asked to do one thing. And yes, we still laughed, but for us, it wasn't the same. It really wasn't. As for offering up other solutions for my brother and sister-in-law to use to entertain their daughter, respectfully, that's not my job. I'm not her parent. We told them no devices. We had several options, as people have mentioned, and we are not her parents, so it wasn't on us to offer up alternative suggestions, seeing as we were a little more preoccupied with getting everything in order to be married. Maybe I shouldn't be so bothered by this, but I am, because it was the lack of courtesy and apology on my brother and sister-in-law's behalf. My niece apologizing doesn't really mean anything because she doesn't understand what she did. Her mom handed her the iPad. My niece is 4 and doesn't understand that what happened was rude. She doesn't grasp that yet. It should have been on my brother and sister-in-law to apologize. Am I the jerk for calling my brother-in-law lazy in front of everyone? Last weekend, I invited my husband's 2 brothers and their wives to stay over the weekend and have a birthday party for my husband. My husband's youngest brother arrived on Friday night with his wife and stayed in our guest bedroom, while the eldest brother offered to smoke some pork overnight and bring it to the party. The poor guy was up all night cooking it, and I told him I didn't want him to lose out on his sleep over it, but he insisted. So, on Saturday, I get up early and I'm cooking and baking all day, and my husband, his brother's wives, and his eldest brother are all helping out. Everyone is busting their tails, except the youngest. He's sitting down in the living room playing video games for hours without a single offer to help. Even the few times I hinted to him that I needed help, he came up with some BS excuse why he wasn't going to be able to help out. Fast forward to the party. Everything came out great. All the food was good and everyone was enjoying themselves. And the jerk brother makes a joke about my cooking to everyone at the party. At this point, I had had enough of him, so I told him, "You're one to talk. Everyone helped with the cooking and to put this party together except for you. You're a lazy and entitled parasite." Now, I know that my retort wasn't the most diplomatic and that I shouldn't have embarrassed him in front of everyone. And my husband got mad at me and said that I was a jerk for calling him out in front of everyone and that I needed to apologize to his brother. I told him I don't owe him an apology at all. Am I the jerk? I feel like one after the fact. I know I should have kept my mouth shut, but I still don't think I should apologize to him. Edit. For those who say that I shouldn't have expected people to help out, I will add that it's an unwritten family rule that when a family member invites others for a dinner or a party, everyone is expected to contribute, either by helping out or bringing a dish. It's always been like that for as long as my husband can remember, and I've adapted to their custom. Edit 2. My brother-in-law always never contributes. Not just at family gatherings, but with anything. My husband's family is very close-knit. Actually, everyone is awesome but him, and they're always helping each other out. He only asks for help, but never helps anyone. In my husband's own words, he always finds a way to worm himself out of helping. Edit 3. My brother-in-law said in front of everyone that my food tasted like prison food. For those wondering if in fact the food tasted bad, it didn't. It tasted delicious. Everyone was complimenting it, and some requested the recipes for some of the dishes, which is what prompted him to make that unsavory joke. He also didn't have a problem with the food, as he had already had 2 servings and was on his way for his 3rd before insulting it. Edit 4. Everyone, even his wife, started asking him for help, and he would still not help out. I feel bad for his wife because it's not just at gatherings, it's with everything. She does everything around the house, from cooking to fixing stuff that gets broken to doing all the errands, and all he does is play video games and watch TV. He's a complete deadbeat. I don't know how she puts up with it. She's got the patience of a saint. Edit 5. Some commenters suggesting putting away our console. The problem is that he has his own and takes it wherever he goes. This time was no exception. As soon as he got up, he connected his console and started playing. Edit 6. Some people have asked why my husband didn't say anything to my brother-in-law first. He didn't have time. As soon as my brother-in-law insulted my food, I snapped back with my insult. I don't know what happened after that because I was seeing red and left the room and went for a walk to calm myself down. I knew if I stayed, I would say a few more choice words to him and would have made things worse. They may have scolded him, I don't know. By the way, thank you for all of your comments, even those that say I'm the jerk. It's very enlightening to see people's opinion of this situation and to make me aware where I went too far.
I don't think you went too far. If homeboy doesn't want you calling him a parasite, maybe he should stop being one.
Sister copied my 5th grade book report. Evil mama bear lets her get away with it. This happened when I was 13 and in middle school. My sister was 10 and in 5th grade at the time. 3 years earlier, when I was in the 5th grade, I did a book report on a light novel I don't really remember, and I got a B+ on the book report. My dad had a habit of filing all the returned school assignments of myself and my sister, and he cataloged them by day, month, year, and topic. I thought his doing so was a bit overzealous, but I didn't really dwell on it. Fast forward 3 years, and one day I noticed my sister came home from school whining about having to do a boring book report. I told her I did a few of them for school in her grade, and they're really not so hard. Just pick a book, read it, and then write about it. Then I brought up the name of the book I'd done a report on at the time and said it might be a good choice for her as it was an easy novel to read with big fonts printed on the pages. Sis had 2 weeks to do the book report, but I never once saw her reading any book at all during that time, and I repeatedly reminded her. She'd just brush me off and say, "I got this." Then one day, my sister comes home all proud of herself that she got a B on her book report, which was odd to me since she really didn't read anything as far as I'd known. Plus, she didn't really care to apply herself. I knew she had the smarts, just not the drive. So out of curiosity, I picked up the report and started to read it. And to my shock, it was just like the one I'd written 3 years earlier. She didn't even change the title. I was furious and called her out for copying my work. Sister just ran into mom's arms crying. Me. She copied my old book report. She doesn't deserve this grade. Mom.
No, she didn't. You are mistaken. My little princess wrote this all by herself. She earned that B.
Me. Fine then. I'll just talk to Dad when he gets home and we'll see who's right.
Don't you talk back to me, young man. Go to your room.
Me. With pleasure. This was before I got my Nokia cell phone. So as I was walking to my room, I sneakily grabbed the cordless phone from its charger and called my dad from upstairs. He was upset and agreed to look at his records when he got home. Surprise, surprise. When he opened up the file cabinet that had my elementary schoolwork in it, it looked like it had been gone through. We found the original book report pretty easily. It had been sloppily shoved back into the file and was crudely folded in half. We read the title, and sure enough, it was the same. We came out of the office, and my dad asked to see my sister's book report. Mom stood her ground and said that her little princess didn't do anything, but Dad was adamant. Mom tried to double down, but Dad told her if she was so confident Sister didn't copy my work, then to let him read it. So Mom finally handed him the book report without even looking at him, and Dad proceeded to compare the two. He got no further than reading the titles of both before Sister started bawling and confessing what she had done. Mom came flying to her aid to hug and kiss her, then chastised us for making her cry. Dad said she ripped off my schoolwork, and if the school found out, she'd have her grade revoked and would likely be punished, which made Sister cry harder. Sister tearfully confessed that a few days earlier she went into Dad's office and looked through my old schoolwork files and found the book report. Then she just hand-wrote her own version of it that was almost identical and put the original back in the cabinet. After confessing, Sister then ran to my dad and latched onto him while crying her eyes out and saying she'd never do it again. I guess my sister's tears made my dad sympathetic because he said that he wouldn't tell the school that she had cheated, but she was still grounded for doing it, and he expected better from her from then on. I was mad, but my dad told me there was no use since Sister had already been graded on the report and no one noticed. This just made Mom give me an evil smirk, like she was saying, "Ha, I win," because she never enforced Sister's groundings while Dad wasn't home. Then Dad took me upstairs and assured me from now on he'd make sure this didn't happen again by keeping better control of his files. Sister didn't get off completely scot-free though. That Sunday, Dad took me out for ice cream and a trip to the mall, but not her. Sister was screaming and begging to come with us, but Dad told her she didn't deserve it for copying my book report. So in essence, it was my grade and not hers, so I'd be getting the ice cream. That made Mom say she'd go out and buy her a tub of whatever ice cream she wanted, but Sister just cried it was not the same and then ran to her room to scream and pout. That was the best ice cream I'd gotten all year. The following week, my dad got some brand new file cabinets with better locks on them, so nobody could get into them anymore but him. And for those who may be wondering why the teacher didn't notice the book report was the same, my old teacher I had back in 5th grade moved on to another school by the time I was in 6th grade, and since it was elementary, it wouldn't surprise me if copied book reports slipped through the cracks there on many occasions. There are a lot of students to keep track of after all. Am I the jerk for refusing to open the door for my sister when she brought her kids to stay with me? Yesterday at 11 a.m., I was alone at home. Husband went to work early, and I was just starting my daily cleaning routine when the bell rang. I, 30, female, peeked through the hole and saw my sister, who's 36, and her 3 kids, who are 5, 3, and 2. I did not open the door and talked to her behind it, and I'll explain why in a minute. She said she had an argument with her chronically ill husband, male 34, and wanted to once again punish him by keeping the kids away from him until he apologized to her for what he said, which was regular argument stuff. Explanation: she started doing this when he got sick. Every time she gets in an argument with my brother-in-law, she'd take the kids and refuse to bring them back until he apologized to her. He has a medical condition that prevents him from going outside the house, and she has been using that. And instead of taking the kids to our aunt's house, this time she brought them to mine since Aunt is out of town. She asked that I take the kids for 2 days, but I refused and pointed out how unacceptable and wrong of her it is to punish her husband, who's already sick, and using the fact that he can't drive to go pick up his kids or at least see them. She'd keep them away for days. She started talking about how her husband doesn't care about her hurt feelings and how much she does for him. Also, how this method has proven to be effective since it's got him to recognize his wrongdoings and apologize. But I replied that he probably was only apologizing just to see the kids. I said it wasn't fair for the kids either, but she said they agreed to stay with me and told me to open the door because they missed me so much. I refused and said I won't be responsible when brother-in-law finally decides to do something about this and get the cops involved. She yelled she's their mother, so the cops won't do a darn thing about it, and assured me my brother-in-law would never do that, knowing how much she's cared for him. But I stood my ground and said I wouldn't be opening the door, period. She yelled, saying I was unsupportive and selfish to keep my nieces and nephews out and refused to open the door for them. I suggested she go work her issues out like a rational adult and stop pulling stunts like that affect her husband and their kids emotionally and mentally. She took offense to that and said I was clearly on my brother-in-law's side. She shamed me in front of the kids for 10 minutes, then left. Hours later, my dad, who lives in another town, called, shaming me for not opening the door for his grandchildren, then insulting my sister and siding against her. I explained my reasons, but he said the kids are with my cousin and insisted I go pick them up. My husband said I should have opened the door for the kids and that he could see how Dad would be upset with me for not taking the kids in until my sister's conflict with her husband is resolved. He wants me to go pick the kids up, but I keep refusing, but I feel like I'm unsupportive of my sister. More details about brother-in-law. He has a chronic illness that's gotten worse lately and limited his ability to do most things. To my knowledge, he's catheterized, wears a cannula on a medical device so he can't drive or walk outside the house. My parents never liked him because he was already sick when my sister married him and said she was just wasting her life with him, but she always says she loves him, but I'm not even sure judging by her recent actions.
My stomach is churning right now. Some people are just evil.
Don't be a Karen if you don't want to look like a Karen. So I remembered a story of malicious compliance as recounted to me by a good friend of mine. My friend is a hairdresser by trade and works at a very upscale salon. I go to her myself and can attest to her being amazing. Anyway, This salon had one customer who had been passed around from hairdresser to hairdresser, bullying every single new one she saw. This woman was an absolute terror. She made count 'em, three separate hairdressers cry. The only reason she was still a client of the salon was that her mom was friends with the owner. She was a relatively young gal, maybe in her mid-20s, with very long bottle blonde hair, past her waist, that she insisted to everyone who wasn't her hairdresser was her natural color. It was very much not. She went to the salon religiously so no one would ever find out her secret shame. She blamed her hairdresser for all of her hair problems, many of which were the results of heavy bleaching and how much heat she used on her hair and her refusal to follow care instructions, and was never satisfied with anything. So everything shuts down in our state, and she screams at my friend to come do her hair for her because she can't have her boyfriend finding out she's not a natural blonde. Anyway, my friend refuses, and despite Karen's threats, she knows that the salon owner knows she's too darn good at her job and has too loyal a customer base to fire her, so she thinks no more of it until a few months later when the salon reopens, and lo and behold, who should appear in the appointment book but Karen? So the day arrives and Karen shows up with her hair dyed jet black, and not very well dyed either. My friend is shocked because Karen's always made such a big deal about being a blonde, and how even though she gets her hair bleached, she really is a natural blonde and just enhancing her hair color a little. My friend asks Karen what they were doing that day, and Karen demands to be made blonde again. My friend is like, okay, that's going to be a process, because this jerk has used black box dye, which is really hard to get out. For those of you who don't know, getting dyed dark hair to blonde is usually something done in stages, so the hair has a chance to recover a bit between bleaching sessions to avoid breakage. Karen is like, no, I am going to be blonde when I leave here today, or I am telling your boss that you see clients at home sometimes and getting you fired. My friend sometimes does friends' hair at home for a lower price because she's a sweetheart, which her boss is fine with. And it's your fault I had to dye my own hair this color because my boyfriend would have seen my roots if I hadn't done something. My friend is tired of Karen's BS at this point, but it's a slow day and she has time. She explains to Karen that if she takes her blonde all in one go, her hair will be fried and she'll likely end up having to lose a lot of length. Karen scoffs and rolls her eyes and is like, that's never happened before, and my hair's so healthy, I'm sure it will be fine if you don't mess it up. Friend recommends at least using Olaplex, a product that helps prevent damage. Karen says she thinks it's a scam to overcharge customers and won't pay for it. Cue malicious compliance. Friend is like, okay, but makes several coworkers be witnesses that this is what Karen is asking for after friend explained the risks. Friend meanwhile has formulated a fiendish scheme. After that, friend goes through the whole process of bleaching Karen's hair. She has to do it like 4 times or something, and she checks with Karen after each one that she's absolutely sure she has to be all the way back to champagne blonde by the end of the day, and recommends stopping at some of the nice auburn or strawberry blonde shades in between for now. But Karen insists her boyfriend hates her hair anything but her natural blonde. My friend knows she will refuse because when has a Karen ever decided at the 11th hour to be reasonable? With each bleaching, there's more breakage, and Karen's hair feels worse. My friend knows Karen's hair won't survive this, but Karen absolutely refuses to let her stop. Eventually, at long last, my friend manages to get Karen's hair to the required level, and so she starts to rinse Karen's hair. It starts breaking off in her hand. The length of her hair is melted, fried, destroyed. My friend gets the bleach out and immediately conditions the ever-loving heck out of it while explaining to Karen that exactly what my friend said would happen has happened. Karen says she must be exaggerating and insists it's fine. Friend wraps what's left of Karen's hair in a towel and takes her back over to the station where she shows Karen the problem. Everything past a little bit beyond her chin length is pretty much gone. Karen shrieks and accuses my friend of everything under the sun. Incompetence, operating without a license. She most definitely has her license, a personal vendetta, etc., etc. My friend eventually calms her down and tells her she'll do her best to cut it so it looks decent for free. She even has the perfect cut in mind. It'll suit Karen perfectly. My friend gives Karen the sharpest, most beautifully cut angled bob you've ever seen. I've seen it thanks to my friend showing me Karen's Insta, that despite the incredible precision and skill showcased, is unequivocally and perfectly the Karen. Blown out and styled to, "Can I speak to your manager?" perfection, Karen starts crying because the cut makes her look 40. She wants to speak to the manager. My friend gets the manager and Karen throws a fit, threatening to sue, and how dare they, and how his employees do this to mock her, and so on and so forth, while my friend stands there looking completely innocent. The boss then asks friend her side of the story, and the other hairdressers back her up and say that the cut is just her trying to make the best of what's left of her hair. Even the boss by now is sick of Karen's BS, and Karen is forced to pay the huge sum of money owed for how much time was spent bleaching her hair, much of which is gone now, and leaves swearing never to come back. Her boyfriend, a cop, calls up later and threatens to assault my friend for doing that to Karen's hair against his wishes, and my friend tells him if he tries anything, she's going to tell his superiors and every news agency in the city. Nothing further happens, but he eventually dumps Karen because he doesn't like girls with short hair. Edit. Unfortunately, Karen's Karen-ness cannot be attributed to her boyfriend's influence. She was like that long before they got together. She had been going to that hair salon since she was a teenager. The older stylists who had been there a while told my friend stories of her antics and had always been a terror. I think this is more a case of birds of a feather than a girl scared into acting unreasonable. Am I the jerk for saying my life is tougher than my sister's, who is a stay-at-home mom? I, female 28, am unmarried, and my sister, Susan, female 37, is a stay-at-home mom to 4 kids, who are 13, 11, 10, and 7. We stay in different states. She chose to become a stay-at-home mom to her 4 kids voluntarily. My brother-in-law earns very well, and they have quite a comfortable life, if that detail matters. Susan has always complained about how tough her life is, how hard it is to bring up her 4 kids, and has compared it to my easy life. While it has always rubbed me the wrong way, I've never really said anything, because undoubtedly, it really must be hard bringing up 4 kids. Over the past few years, despite my parents, my other sister Lisa, and I living in the same state, Susan has always demanded we go to her place for Christmas because managing the kids is too hard, and being a mom is incredibly difficult. Last year, I even suggested a retreat that would have been equally distant for her and us, but she refused, saying it was just too hard and I wouldn't understand since I don't have kids and am not married. This year, she expects me to make the trip to her place again. Lockdown, anyone? I refused. I may not have 4 kids, but I have an extremely stressful job. I work about 60 hours a week, and I also do not have financial security that she does to even risk taking a few days off and have a significant amount of student debt to pay off. I studied abroad, but am earning in a local currency, so the gap is even harder to bridge. Also, Lisa has some health issues, and therefore, I'm the one who does her grocery shopping and such because it's unsafe for her to venture out now. When Susan demanded Lisa, my parents, and I would have to come to her place again this year for Christmas, not to mention I'll have to drive and pay for fuel, I point blank refused. She screamed at me and told me I'm selfish and that I'd never know the amount of work it takes to be a mother and that it was no surprise no guy wanted to marry me. I also lost my temper and told her it isn't an achievement to give birth to 4 kids, that she doesn't have to worry about paying her rent or being able to afford her next meal, and there are plenty of life struggles that are tougher than having kids. Lisa is on my side, but she's always had a soft spot for me. My parents think I'm a huge jerk disrespecting Susan and are temporarily not speaking to me. So Reddit, I know it's hard to be a mom, but am I the jerk? We'll accept any judgment.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.